If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 21, News from the Zaofa Front. The golden rays of morning filtered through the windows of the Fire Nation High Command, casting a regal glow over the war room. Admiral Lung stood tall, arms crossed behind his back, overlooking a map of the world spread across the table. Yet his mind was far from topics at hand. His thoughts, as they often were these days, were with his son. In all the Fire Nation, perhaps in all the world, Admiral Lung felt he was the luckiest and proudest man alive. His son, Tai Lung, had turned out to be beyond exceptional, no, beyond anything the Fire Nation had ever seen. A prodigy among prodigies. At only 12 years old, Tai had defeated the Fire Lord, one of the strongest bending grandmasters in the entire nation. And it wasn't a desperate victory, nor was it hard-fought, it was one-sided. Flawless victory. Still, even pride had its limits, and Admiral Lung knew the dangers of keeping someone like Tai Lung too close to the political heart of the Fire Nation. The capital was full of ambitious and jealous eyes. So he had sent his son away, on a ship, under the pretense of a global journey to broaden his horizons and participate in the war effort. That much was true, but there was more to it. It would allow Tai to grow, to gain the respect and merit he deserved from every corner of the world, and more importantly, to avoid the internal strife that could have one day seen him killing his own countrymen or being turned into a pawn by lesser minds. To ensure Tai wouldn't face those challenges alone, Admiral Lung had appointed Han as vice-captain and advisor, an experienced and loyal soldier and friend who had served along him and under him for many years. The Admiral trusted Han with his son's life, and he had instructed him to send regular reports about Tai Lung's condition, progress, and decisions. And the letters had painted a portrait that surpassed even the Admiral's lofty expectations. Between the letters from Tai himself, Han's careful updates, and the formal reports from Fire Nation outposts, the picture was clear. Tai Lung was carrying himself not only with power but with dignity and honor. He punished lawbreakers among their ranks, spoke out against injustice even when it put him at odds with other officers, and never hesitated to help those in need, citizens and soldiers alike. Some on the Fire Lord's Council scoffed at his conduct, calling it foolish idealism. But they were powerless to stop him. Because Tai Lung's actions upheld the honor of the Fire Nation, an ideal those same council members merely paid lip service to. Admiral Lung's gaze drifted across the room toward the Fire Lord, seated a short distance away at the council table. Even now, Admiral Lung could not look at him without remembering that disgraceful Agni Kai. Since that day, the Fire Lord had lost much of his former prestige. His long, signature hair, once a symbol of strength and lineage, had been shorn as tradition dictated for the loser of an Agni Kai. Now, 2 years later, his dark hair has barely reached his shoulders. The humiliation was permanent. Were it not for General Iroha's firm refusal to claim the throne, Oze's rule of the Fire Nation would have shattered under the weight of that shame. Admiral Lung didn't gloat, but neither did he pity the man. He had brought it on himself. Admiral Lung turned back toward the map, thoughts of Tai rising once more. The reports of his son's achievements had grown in number and significance. Though Tai had yet to see the front lines, his name carried weight now. He had defeated pirates, destroyed Southern Water Tribe raiders, dismantled rogue earthbender groups masquerading as freedom fighters, and protected Fire Nation merchants and colonies wherever he went. Wherever Tai Lung stepped, order followed. Peace was restored. Problems were solved. And with each new tale of triumph, Admiral Lung saw the looks from the other officers and council members. Their pride was painted thinly over a layer of envy. They smiled and offered congratulations, but the gleam in their eyes told another story. Tai Lung was his son, and no one could take that from him. He thought of Prince Zuko, who had only just begun attending these meetings, still fumbling through the formalities. In contrast, his son had already amassed more merit than captains who had served for decades. The difference was stark. And it was undeniable. Admiral Lung let a small smile cross his usually stoic features. Let them envy. Let the world watch. My son was coming, and greatness followed him like a shadow. As Admiral Lung was still savoring the thought of his son's soaring reputation, the heavy doors of the council chamber creaked open. A messenger stepped forward, his armor stained with dust from travel, his breathing quick but controlled. My lords, he said, bowing low, news from the Zaofa front. Admiral Lung straightened slightly. Zaofu? That was the latest major maneuver, 10,000 Fire Nation soldiers had been sent through the treacherous Zaofa mountain range in a bold attempt to reach and strike Omasha from an unexpected angle. The plan had been daring, even brilliant, on paper. But something in the messenger's tone made the Admiral's stomach tighten. The young man continued. General Chen led the assault force into the mountains, but there he was ambushed by King Bumi and 3,000 earthbenders. The mountains themselves were turned against us. The tops collapsed, entire cliffs brought down upon our men. Nearly half the army was either killed outright. The remaining 5,000, many of them wounded, are now trapped. Encircled. King Bumi decided to take his time. He planned to slowly kill them out without risking his own forces. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Faces hardened, jaws clenched. This was a staggering loss. Then, with a roar of flame, the fire curtain in front of the Fire Lord surged upward, roaring into the ceiling. His fury was palpable. Speak, the Fire Lord ordered, voice razor sharp. There is more. The messenger bowed lower. Yes, my lord. General Shinu believed King Bumi would not stop at that. He has requested reinforcements be sent to defend the coastal fortress. He believes Bumi will seize the opportunity and strike them once he eliminates General Chen. Nods of agreement came from several council members. Admiral Lung remained silent as he thought about it. It was a calculated, cautious move. Reinforce the fortress. Abandon the soldiers. A cost of war decision. Strategic. Cold. Expected. But the messenger's face twitched as he continued, and Admiral Lung felt a chill. Captain Tai Lung's ship arrived at the fortress during this time, the messenger said. General Shinu ordered him to assist in defending the fortress. He hesitated, then added, Captain Lung disagreed. There was a pause. Disagreed. Someone murmured. The messenger swallowed. He refused the order, and attacked General Shinu. He imprisoned the general in a cell beneath the fortress. Silence fell. Complete and deafening. A captain attacking and imprisoning a general? Admiral Lung's brow furrowed, a flicker of disbelief crossing even his face. It was unprecedented. Never in the Fire Nation's long, disciplined history had such a thing occurred. The fire curtain exploded again, more violently this time, as several ministers stood in protest. Treason! One cried. Mutiny! Said another. Outrage echoed across the room like thunder. But Admiral Lung raised a hand, his voice calm but cold as steel. Enough, he said. Continue. What happened next? The messenger blinked but obeyed. Captain Lung took 500 soldiers and led a mission into the mountains. He moved quickly, decisively. And he succeeded. He saved most of the trapped troops, striking hard at the enemy forces. In the process, hundreds of earthbenders were killed and Captain Tai Lung heavily injured King Bumi. He nearly killed him. A hush swept across the room once again. Eyes widened. Whispers started and died in the throats of generals and lords alike. Heavily injured King Bumi. One minister breathed. The messenger nodded. Yes. But during the battle, Captain Lung struck a deal. To secure safe withdrawal and ensure the lives of our soldiers, he agreed to spare King Bumi's life and promised the enemy that he will never participate in another attack against Omashu personally. The audience were stunned into silence. Admiral Lung himself felt a complicated mix of awe and disbelief. A promise made in battle? Sparing the legendary king? And in the face of impossible odds, he had saved thousands. After a moment of silence, General Iroh, who had been listening, spoke up with a warm yet commanding voice. Is there anything else? The messenger nodded. Yes, General. Captain Lung is refusing to release General Shinu. He has requested the general be tried for treason. A third wave of silence slammed into the chamber. First, he struck a general. Then, he jailed him. Now, he wanted him tried. A captain doing all this? The audacity alone was unbelievable. But then, one by one, the council members recalled another memory, one not so long ago, of a 12-year-old boy humiliating the Fire Lord in Agni Kai, unshaken by status or consequence. Suddenly, none of it felt out of place. It was simply Tai Lung. Chapter 22, Proposals. It had been 2 years since the Agni Kai that shook the Fire Nation. 2 years since the Fire Lord, bearer of the crown and symbol of unmatched power and divine rights, had been brought to his knees by a boy no older than 12. A boy named Tai Lung. And now, that name echoed once more across the capital, spoken in awe, whispered in admiration, shouted in celebration. This time, the boy had not only duelled a king, but defied a system. He had disobeyed direct orders, imprisoned a commanding general, and marched 500 men into a death trap. All to rescue thousands of soldiers who had been left to die in the Zaofa mountain range. And against all odds, he succeeded. Now, they called him more than a prodigy. They called him a war hero. An honorable soldier who placed his comrades above politics and position. A man who risked his life and future to save his brothers in arms. Letters poured into the capital, not from nobles or generals, but from mothers and fathers. From wives and sisters. From children who could still call their fathers by name because of what Tai Lung had done. Many of those letters found their way to Admiral Lung's household. And every one of them was read by both the Admiral and his wife. They filled the house with a quiet, overwhelming pride. A pride that had no room for vanity or arrogance. Their son was something else. Something rare. Something meant for greatness. And today, after 2 long years, he was coming home. At the docks, Admiral Lung stood tall and composed as always, his expression calm, but in his eyes, fire and joy danced together. Beside him, his wife barely hid her excitement. Her hands fidgeted at her sides, her eyes scanned the horizon, and her foot tapped with impatience. The moment she saw Tai Lung's ship arrive, her breath hitched. She was practically glowing. The vessel docked, and the gangplank lowered with a creak of wood and rope. And then, he appeared. Tai Lung. Taller now, his shoulders broader, his steps steady with confidence and power. His presence had matured. His gaze sharper, posture refined but still, unmistakably, their son. He spotted them. A smile broke across his face. He moved to bow in greeting, but his mother rushed forward, arms already reaching. Admiral Lung wasn't far behind. No bowing, his mother said as she wrapped him in a fierce hug, voice cracking with emotion. We missed you so much. Tai Lung laughed softly, returning the embrace with both arms. I missed you, too. With no ceremony, just smiles and soft words, the family of 3 returned to their home. The evening that followed was warm and easy. His mother took up most of the conversation, urging him to retell the stories he'd mentioned in his letters. What were the pirate raids really like? What did Kyoji Island really look like? And what exactly did King Bumi say after being defeated? Tai Lung humored her questions with patience and respect, speaking modestly, letting her excitement carry the tone. And all the while, Admiral Lung sat quietly across from them with a cup of warm tea in hands. He said little. But his smile, subtle and proud, never left his face. His son had returned. And he was more than anything he had ever hoped he would be. The palace burned with tension and from fury. A suffocating heat emanated not from the hearths or lanterns across the palace, but from the Fire Lord himself. His rage was silent, coiled and controlled. But within, it churned like magma. That insolent boy! It had been 2 years since the disgraceful Agni Kai, since a 12-year-old defeated him in front of nobles, guards, and the eyes of the nation. He had endured the humiliation then because he had no choice. Meanwhile, the boy had left the capital and wandered freely ever since, and the Fire Lord Oze, could not touch him. Not without cause. Not without risking another devastating blow to his already fractured image. The loss had scarred his rule. Many officers, nobles, even commoners whispered in secret, that it should have been Iroh who ruled. That Oze lacked the strength, the composure, the honor. Thankfully, his brother was a fool, too loyal to a dead man's supposed will to stake his claim. But the boy, Tai Lung, the boy was different. Oze had considered smearing the child's name. Painting him as aimless, dishonorable, and lacking duty. But wherever Tai Lung went, he improved the Fire Nation standing. He solved conflicts, helped villages, rooted out corruption. He earned respect from soldiers and civilians alike, not through power alone, but with action and results. Now, the boy was being called a hero. And worse, he had just committed mutiny, openly disobeying General Shinu, attacking him, and imprisoning him in his own fortress. It was an unforgivable breach of the chain of command. Yet instead of being condemned, Tai Lung was celebrated. He had led a daring rescue into Zaofa range, saved thousands of soldiers, and even defeated the legendary earthbender King Bumi in battle. The council chamber now whispered about promoting him to general. To admiral. To anything. Ose's fury flared at the thought. Promote him? That boy would become a permanent threat. A symbol of defiance to his rule. No. The Fire Lord's hands clenched. He would not tolerate adding another high-ranking officer to oppose his will, and one standing proudly with the people behind him. But what else can he do? Assassins? Useless. The boy had become a monster. A blue-flamed monster. He would not fall easily, if at all. Then, like a faint breeze breaking a heated silence, came an unexpected knock. His war minister entered the chamber with calm and confidence, his robes rustling against the polished floor. Beside him stood Princess Angela. She was asked by the minister to follow him to meet her father. Ose's sharp eyes narrowed with interest. I may have a plan, the minister said. To restore your prestige, my lord, and ensure Admiral Lung's loyalty to the royal family. His words got the full attention of the Fire Lord. Even Angela looked at the minister with interest, curious about what he was going to say next. I believe having a union between Princess Angela and Tai Lung is a solution to the royal family trouble. The minister spoke with no reservations. Angela's face twisted in shock then anger, she spoke with a voice sharp with disbelief. Union? This is ridiculous. After everything he did to father, you want me to marry him? The war minister remained composed. Yes, princess. Tai Lung has shown himself to be bound by honor and virtue. If the two of you were united, the enmity between him and the royal family would dissolve. Your union would strengthen the throne, and your father's name would once again be held in reverence. Angela scowled. I don't need him. I've been training hard. One day, I will definitely defeat him. She raised her hand, and a flickering stream of blue fire erupted from her palm. I can create blue fire like him now. Once I master it fully, I'll move on to lightning. The minister nodded. There is no doubt of your greatness, princess. And that is why the two of you are well matched. When your time comes, who in this nation will be worthy of you? The only one who has unlocked blue fire aside from you, Tai Lung. He stepped closer. And imagine, the union of two such prodigies. It could birth a new generation the likes of which the Fire Nation has never seen. Angela's fire slowly died out. Her hand lowered. She had trained for years, fueled by the desire to surpass Tai Lung. She had envisioned standing over him in victory. But now, as the minister spoke, a new thought struck her. Who else but him could stand beside her as an equal in the future? Even if they were to marry, it didn't mean she couldn't outshine him in time. She would surpass him one day. She would be the greatest firebender of this era. Her golden eyes turned toward her father. I will follow your orders, she said. What should I do? Fire Lord Ose's face, at last, broke into a satisfied gleam. A glint of cruel amusement danced in his eyes. We will proceed, he said coldly. With the minister's suggestion. Underscore. Back in the Lung household, Tai sat with his parents in the main room, a cup of freshly brewed tea warming his hands as he answered another question from his ever-curious mother. But just as he relaxed into the rhythm of home, his parents exchanged a glance, one that made room pause for a second. Admiral Lung set his cup down, his face as calm and composed as ever, while his mother leaned forward, an excited sparkle in her eyes. Tai Lung, she began, her tone strangely formal, there's something we've been meaning to talk to you about. He tilted his head, sensing the shift. Is something wrong? No, no, she said quickly, shaking her head. Quite the opposite. It's something new. Admiral Lung nodded. You've grown, son. Not just in strength or in the eyes of the public, but in age as well. You're 14 now. A young man. Tai Lung blinked, unsure where this was going. Okay. That means, his mother cut in with a mischievous smile, you're of age to begin thinking about a partner. He froze. What? His father's expression didn't change, but he added, you've received marriage offers, Tai Lung. From noble families. The cup nearly slipped from his hand. What? It's not unusual, his mother said, laughing at his stunned expression. Given your reputation, your accomplishments, your name, many have taken notice. Their daughters, especially. Tai Lung opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. He was still reeling. You don't have to choose anyone right now, Admiral Lung said gently, but it's time to start thinking about it. You are old enough. We have stashed all the proposals you have received in your room. His mother leaned back with a satisfied smile. We thought it would surprise you. It certainly had. This was something new to him, even including his past life. Chapter 23, Fiancé. Tai Lung sat alone in his room expressionlessly as he stared at the flickering lantern hanging from the ceiling. In his past life, he had lived solely for Kung Fu and to make his father proud. His only dream is to become the Dragon Warrior. It consumed his every breath. He had no friends, no lover, never even considered such thoughts. And now, even after living in this new world for 14 years, he still found himself empty. No dreams. No long-term aspirations. Yes, he wanted to regain his strength and rise even higher. He wanted to master firebending. But he was already considered the strongest in the world. What was there beyond reaching the top? There was nothing. He was merely honoring his parents' wishes, and living by the teachings he once abandoned. That was the extent of it. He was still the same aimless person born 14 years ago. His eyes drifted to the desk on the other side of his room. A box sat on it, filled with sealed letters and scrolls, engagement proposals from noble families across the Fire Nation. Tai Lung frowned. What experience did he have in such matters? Did he even care? The answers were simple, none, and he didn't care. In this world, leaving behind teachings and students didn't count as a complete legacy, only lineage through blood was. In his nation's customs, his duty to his parents was to ensure their name lived on, that their bloodline continued through him. Sure, he can do that, but who was he supposed to choose? He didn't know most of these families. He didn't know their daughters, and barely registered any of their sons. Tai Lung sighed heavily. This was going to be more difficult than expected. As he sat pondering, a servant knocked on the door. Sir, you have visitors, the servant said with a respectful bow. Tai Lung rose to his feet, his curiosity piqued. Visitors? Perhaps Han, or someone else from his crew. He walked down the hall toward the guest area. As he stepped inside, he immediately spotted two familiar figures. Tai Li and Mai. Tai Li's eyes gleamed with excitement. She rushed forward, throwing her arms around him in a tight hug. It's been so long. How could you not write to us? Mai, standing a few steps behind her, spoke in her usual calm tone. I didn't mind you not writing, but it's nice to see you back. And safe. Tai Lung blinked in surprise, not at Tai Li's hug, but at Mai's words. He looked at her curiously. It seems you've grown while I was away. Tai Li laughed as Mai raised a brow. I'm already regretting coming here. The trio settled into easy conversation. Well, mostly Tai Li talking about herself, Mai, the academy, and asking Tai Lung about his life and travels. Mai joined in with her deadpan commentary from time to time. They eventually made their way outside to the courtyard. Tai Li insisted on showing off her new tricks and acrobatics. She moved with agility and grace, then suddenly shifted into combat poses, demonstrating her newly learned Qi blocking techniques. I started learning Qi blocking after your Agni Kai 2 years ago, she said, beaming with pride. Tai Lung watched carefully, impressed. She was easily the best hand-to-hand combatant he'd seen in this world. Her only real flaw was her physical weakness, but with time and if she learned to empower herself with Qi, she could stand among the strongest in the world. He didn't hesitate to praise her, and Tai Li's smile grew even wider at his words. After a while, Mai brought up the one topic troubling Tai Lung. At the Royal Academy of Girls, a lot of them talk about their parents sending engagement proposals to you. Tai Lung nodded. I received many. Did you choose one? Mai asked. Tai Lung shook his head. Didn't even check them. There's no point. I don't know any of them and I barely register their names. He gave a casual shrug. I barely know any girls in person anyway. He paused, his gaze drifting to Mai, then to Tai Li, before focusing on the latter. His expression turned thoughtful. Tai Li tilted her head. Is something wrong? Are you engaged to anyone? Tai Lung asked bluntly. If not, then why don't we get engaged? Both girls were stunned. Tai Li blushed furiously, her words stumbling out. Why all of a sudden? Tai Lung's tone remained calm and practical. I'm supposed to choose someone. You're among the few I know. We get along. We share similar interests. Your family is good. You look good. You're the best choice I see. Tai Li's face was burning now. She opened her mouth but no words came out. Mai finally spoke with a curious tone. What about me? Or Angela? Tai Lung replied without hesitation. Your personality and interests are completely different from mine. As for Angela, I haven't seen her in a long time, I have a bad history with her father, and last I checked she disliked me. Tai Li is undoubtedly the best choice I have. He looked at Tai Li. So, what do you think? Tai Li blinked rapidly. I need to think about it. You can't just say something like that and expect an answer right away. Not really, Tai Lung shrugged. It's a simple yes or no. If you think it's worth a try, then you try. That's it. Tai Li was stunned by his bluntness. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, then whispered, yes. Tai Lung gave a short nod. I'll let my parents know, he said, then turned and walked off. My turn to Tai Li. As carefree as you are, I never imagined your engagement proposal would happen like this. It feels wrong with how casual and blunt it was. Tai Li was still blushing furiously, staring off in the direction Tai had gone. She couldn't believe it. Her friend had just proposed to her, and she said yes. All of it happened out of nowhere. Underscore. When Tai Lung abruptly announced his choice of engagement is Tai Li, and even more surprisingly added that he already asked her and she had agreed, it left both his parents stunned. His mother and father sat across from him in the sitting room, mouth slightly open, processing the news. That was unusually fast, his mother said slowly, exchanging a look with Admiral Lung. You've only just returned, and you're already selecting one. Tai Lung nodded with his usual calm demeanor, before leaving. Admiral Lung crossed his arms, his eyes narrowing. What do you think made him think she was the one? His selection was rather fast, too fast. He basically proposed to the first girl he saw. Selecting a partner is not like buying the first cabbage you see, maybe I should talk to him and make sure he understands what he is committing himself to. Tai Lung's mother laughed and said. I am not surprised it was her, he knew her the longest after all. That girl used to come here all the time when they were kids. Tai even turned her into a training junkie. Had her doing drills, flipping through the garden and some other things they called training. Admiral Lung blinked, clearly caught off guard. He did what? It was his first time hearing about that. Well, his wife continued with a nod of approval, it's good he's taking responsibility for that. If anyone was going to marry the girl, it may as well be the boy who put her on this path. Admiral Lung looked at her, clearly unsure what to say, and just sighed. Right, of course. Underscore. Despite his initial surprise, Admiral Lung wasted no time in making the engagement official. Within the day, he arranged for a formal visit to Tai Li's family home. It was during this visit that Tai Lung discovered something entirely new and utterly bewildering about his new fiancée. Tai Li was one of 7 identical sisters. He met them all that day, Tai Lin, Tai Lat, Tai Lao, Tai Lu, Tai Lum, and Tai Wu. All of them stared at him with the same wide, curious eyes, the same bubbly energy, the same mischievous grins. For a moment, Tai Lung thought his vision was failing him. How could there be 7 of her? For 14 years, Tai had assumed humans usually had 1, maybe 2 children at most, and even that was rare in this world. But 7? He was speechless. It was a loud, jarring reminder that there was still a lot he didn't know about this world. As if that wasn't enough, the sisters decided to play a joke on him. They lined up in front of him and giggled. If you're going to marry our sister, one said, you should be able to find her. Pick the real Tai Li, another added with a wink. Tai Lung narrowed his eyes, scanning them. Their appearances were identical, but Tai Lung focused not on their faces, but their bodies, their stances, their energy. And there it was. A subtle difference in posture, in the way one of them bounced slightly on the balls of her feet, her breathing a touch more measured than the rest. He pointed without hesitation. That one. The girls blinked. Tai Li stepped forward, a wide smile blooming across her face. You got it. The sisters regrouped and shuffled places. Again. They repeated the game, 3, 4, 5 times, and each time, Tai Lung found her effortlessly. The others eventually gave up, laughing in defeat. Tai Li's joy was evident, genuine, and uncontainable. Her eyes sparkled as she looked at him, clearly moved by how easily he had distinguished her from the others. She wasn't just another face in a matching set to him. And that meant more to her than Tai Lung knew. Chapter 24, The Princess's Rivalry. In the wide courtyards of the Royal Academy for Girls, Princess Azula walked with her usual confident stride. Her eyes scanned the open space until they landed on her two closest companions, Mai and Tai Li, sitting under the shade of a cherry blossom tree. From afar, Azula could already tell something was unusual. Tai Li was wearing the widest smile Azula had ever seen on her. She was practically glowing, chatting with more energy than usual with Mai, who, for her part, looked both amused and faintly exasperated. Intrigued, Azula approached. "What did I miss that made you extra happy today?" she asked as she came to a stop beside them. Tai Li finally noticed her and gasped with delight. "Azula!" she chirped, reaching out and grabbing the princess's hands excitedly. Mai glanced over and said, deadpan, "You won't believe it." Azula raised a brow, curiosity piqued. "Try me." Still holding her hands, Tai Li practically bounced in place. "I'm engaged." Azula blinked. "Really? When?" "I just saw you yesterday." Tai Li nodded enthusiastically. "I know. It was sudden. All of it was done yesterday." Mai added dryly, "The fastest proposal and answer I've ever heard of." Azula was clearly surprised, her expression momentarily faltering before she composed herself. "Well, congratulations," she said with a smile. "So who's the lucky guy?" Tai Li's grin widened. "Tai Lung." Azula froze. "As in Admiral Lung's son?" she asked slowly, her voice slightly weaker than usual. Tai Li nodded brightly. "Yep." Azula was beyond shocked. Her mind reeled. "How?" Tai Li began to explain, still caught in the high of the memory. "Yesterday, Mai and I went to visit him, you know he was away for 2 years. And then out of nowhere, he proposed. Just like that. I said yes, and by evening, Admiral Lung came to my house and everything was made official." She giggled. "Tai Lung is my fiancé now." Azula gave a small nod. "So that's why you're happy?" Tai Li shook her head. "Not exactly." She leaned closer, eyes sparkling. "Last night, my sisters and I decided to play a little joke on him, since we're 7 identical sisters. We lined up and asked him to pick me out." Azula blinked, she knew how impossible it was to find Tai Li among her sisters. Tai Li went on, dreamy-eyed. "He got it right away. Every single time. He had no doubt as he signaled me out. Even my parents can't tell us apart, but Tai Lung could. Like it was nothing. It was. I don't know. It just made me feel so special." Azula forced a smile, keeping her face perfectly composed. To both Mai and Tai Li, her reaction was understandable. Anyone would be surprised at such a sudden engagement. It was sudden, after all, and not to mention the bad history between her family and Tai Lung. But what they didn't know was that Azula had plans. She had been planning to approach Tai Lung later today. Not out of affection, Azula didn't waste her time on that, but because of what the minister had said, Tai Lung was the ideal candidate. The son of an admiral, a prodigy in his own right, and one of, if not, the strongest benders in this era. She was the princess and she deserved only the best of everything, including her future partner. And her father's orders had only made her more determined. And now, he was engaged. To Tai Li. Azula listened as Mai and Tai Li chatted on about the engagement, how Tai Lung had apparently always viewed Tai Li as the right choice. Every word stung. Every laugh Tai Li gave felt like a slap. She was the princess. She was the prodigy. And yet Tai Lung had proposed to the girl who could do cartwheels and handstands. Her pride felt hurt, especially when she remembered she was going to initiate the contact with Tai Lung. The anger and bitterness boiled inside her like a pot on the verge of spilling. A flame of competitiveness roared to life. Still smiling sweetly, she tilted her head and asked with feigned concern, "Are you sure Tai Lung is the right person for you, Tai Li?" Tai Li blinked in surprise. "What do you mean?" Azula kept her voice gentle, almost sisterly. "He's a fire-bending prodigy, and usually, firebenders look for partners with strong bending potential to strengthen their bloodline. What if he changes his mind? Or what if his parents pressure him to?" Tai Li froze, the joy draining slightly from her face. Mai's eyes narrowed. Tai Lung is not the kind of person who cares about that, Mai said firmly. And his father didn't hesitate to make things official. Tai Li nodded slowly, smiling again, but this time the light in her eyes was a little dimmer, her enthusiasm slightly restrained. Angela gave a nonchalant shrug. But inside, she was smirking. Later that day, Tai Li met with Tai Lung for their first official date as an engaged couple. She smiled brightly as they walked side by side. So, she asked playfully, do you have anything planned? Tai Lung looked ahead calmly. We'll eat at a nearby restaurant. After that, it's up to you, choose whatever you like. Tai Li giggled. You're not very good with dates, are you? Tai shrugged. Never thought about them before. The first time I even asked what I was supposed to do, was today. He said it so plainly that Tai Li couldn't help but smile more. I thought of picking a few things, he added, but then I decided against it. You can choose whatever you want to do for the rest of the day. Leave it to me to make it fun. She said, giving him a wink. They shared a quiet meal at a cozy restaurant, where Tai Li did most of the talking and Tai Lung listened with occasional nods or questions. After eating, Tai Li dragged him to go shopping, pointing at clothes and trinkets while Tai Lung followed without complaint. The day ended with them attending a small circus, Tai Li's eyes sparkling with excitement while Tai Lung observed in silence. He didn't object to any part of it. By nightfall, Tai Lung was walking Tai Li back to her home under the faint glow of lanterns. That was fun, Tai Li said, smiling as she looked up at him. Tai Lung nodded. It was new. Tai Li tilted her head. What counts as fun for you? Training, he replied simply. Tai Li laughed. You haven't changed at all. But then her smile faded slightly, Angela's words from earlier echoing in her head. The insecurity crept in, and despite herself, she asked. Don't you mind me not being a firebender? Shouldn't you be looking for a firebender to continue your bloodline? Tai Lung blinked. Never really thought of that. I think you're good without being able to bend fire. Tai Li froze. His first sentence struck something in her. He never thought of it. But he could, couldn't he? What if he changed his mind? Tai Lung noticed the change in her demeanor. What's wrong? Her gaze dropped. Noble families with strong firebenders, they usually choose partners who can also bend fire, to strengthen their line. I'm not a firebender. So? He asked, clearly confused. You should choose someone who can firebend, not me. Tai Lung's brows furrowed. That's a stupid way of thinking, why? You think I'm stupid? Tai Li interrupted sharply, hurt flashing in her eyes. Tai Lung blinked. That's not what I said. But Tai Li turned and ran, disappearing into the night before he could say anything else. He stood there, dumbfounded. What was that? Did I say something wrong, he thought. Underscore. The next day at the academy, Tai Li walked in without her usual brightness. The change was immediately noticed by everyone, especially Mai and Angela. What's wrong? Mai asked. Tai Li hesitated before relaying everything that had happened the day before. He said I was stupid, she mumbled. Angela raised an eyebrow, suppressing a smirk. He called you stupid. That's what it felt like, Tai Li said softly. Angela folded her arms and feigned anger. How dare he? That's unacceptable. But Mai looked skeptical. It sounds like you're misunderstanding something. Angela gave her a pointed look. What's there to misunderstand? He called Tai Li stupid. Tai Li lowered her head further, her sadness deepening. The mood stayed the same for the rest of the day. When the academy finally let out, the three girls walked out together, only to stop at the sight of Tai Lung standing outside the gates, holding a small bag in one hand. Tai Li hesitated at first, but with Mai and Angela by her side, she slowly walked forward. Angela was the first to speak, voice sharp and confrontational. Are you here to apologize after calling Tai Li stupid? Tai Lung looked at her calmly, then shifted his gaze to Tai Li, who still refused to look at him. No, he said evenly. I'm not here to apologize. I didn't call her stupid. She interrupted me before I could finish and ran away. Angela narrowed her eyes. Trying to change your words now. Tai Lung ignored her. I think considering bloodlines just for firebending is stupid. I could beat the Fire Lord with the so-called divine bloodline without even needing to bend fire. Angela froze, eyes flashing with barely contained fury. Tai Li, meanwhile, looked up at him, startled. Tai Lung stepped forward and extended the bag toward her. But it seems you value this bloodline way of thinking, he said. So, these are martial arts scrolls. If you learn and master them, I'm sure you'll be stronger than most benders. A bloodline of martial arts for you, instead of fire bending. Tai Li blinked, stunned. Then she threw her arms around him. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I misunderstood you. Tai Lung rested a hand on her back. It's fine. Just, don't run off next time. Fighting in a war was easier than figuring out why you were upset. Tai Li laughed through a sniffle. It won't happen again. Angela stood there, silently glaring daggers at Tai Lung, but he didn't spare her another glance. Mai, meanwhile, smiled faintly, just a small amused curl of her lips. Chapter 25, Assassination. The Fire Lord stood silently in his grand chambers, his robes billowing slightly from the breeze slipping in through the high windows. His expression was carved from stone, tight-lipped, cold-eyed, and utterly displeased. Just when he thought he was close to reclaiming control, just when the moment had come to rein Tai Lung in and recover the prestige he had lost in recent years, it had slipped through his fingers. The boy had gotten engaged to some random insignificant girl. A non-bender. A girl from a low-standing noble house. There was nothing remarkable about her, nothing special or strategic that could possibly justify such a match. Fire Lord Oze had not even expected to win instantly. He had anticipated the need for a slow, deliberate approach. His daughter Angela was only beginning to prepare herself to confront and charm Tai Lung, to draw him into the fold as a useful weapon and potential consort. But that plan had failed before it could even begin. The boy's decision, this engagement, was foolish in Oze's eyes. Even if not Angela, there had been dozens of better options. Girls from strong families. Firebenders. Bloodlines worthy of legacy. But he was Oze, the Fire Lord. He would not accept such an outcome. He would not allow it. He turned from the shadows of his chamber and walked to the open window. With calm movements, he tied a letter to the leg of a waiting messenger hawk. His fingers were calm, but his eyes burned with resolve. He released the hawk into the sky, watching it disappear into the clouds. One way or another, things would go his way. Meanwhile, in the home of Admiral Lung, Tai Lung's parents sat quietly in their parlor. The room was warm with afternoon light, but the mood was mixed. The Admiral's wife let out a long sigh. She looked weary. It's not that bad, Admiral Lung said gently, still smiling. She turned her eyes toward him, unimpressed. What kind of date is that supposed to be? He's training his fiancée in martial arts instead of taking her out to relax and enjoy themselves. The Admiral chuckled lightly. They seem to be having fun. And you were the one calling them training junkies last week. I know, she said, shaking her head. But I can't help feeling sorry for her. Tai Li's a sweet girl, and now she's spending her days sweating in the courtyard because of our son. In the courtyard, the air was filled with the sound of swift movements, light footsteps, and the occasional burst of laughter. Tai Li moved like a whirlwind, striking with all the precision and speed she could muster. But Tai Lung was like a wall of wind, never quite in reach, always dodging with uncanny ease. Finally, breathless and panting, Tai Li dropped to the ground, arms flopping behind her. You're way too strong and fast, she said with a tired laugh. Tai Lung sat beside her, his breathing barely elevated. I train a lot. Tai Li turned to look at him, her cheeks flushed pink. For a moment, she hesitated, then said softly, Tai, would you like to try kissing? Tai Lung looked at her, noting the blush in her face. In his past life, kisses were not a common expression. It was something he'd never seen as animals of all species ignored it, or maybe never thought of it. Most species' lips didn't help in that aspect anyway. Yet, here in this life, it seemed to hold more meaning. After a pause, he gave a small nod. Tai Li closed her eyes and leaned in, her face burning red. Tai Lung stared at her a moment longer, then moved forward and gently pressed his lips to hers. The kiss lasted only a few seconds, soft and warm. When they pulled apart, Tai Li looked like she might explode from embarrassment, completely crimson. Tai Lung, meanwhile, was deep in thought. He considered the sensation not unpleasant. His judgment, not bad. He looked at Tai Li and smiled. That was all it took. With a squeak, Tai Li leapt to her feet and bolted away, hands covering her face. Tai Lung blinked in confusion, left alone once more. If Tai Li is upset, she runs away. If she's embarrassed, she also runs away. He sat back and exhaled, filing the observation in his mind with the rest of his martial knowledge. Understanding a girl's mood is difficult was his final conclusion. Underscore. The next day, the academy buzzed like usual. The trio of Angela, Mai, and Tai Li were sitting together on the grass during their break. Tai Li beamed as she shared every detail of the previous day's training and what followed. Her cheeks were still pink as she recounted how Tai Lung had agreed to kiss her, how gentle he had been, how serious his eyes looked when he smiled. Mai listened with her usual distant expression, her mind elsewhere. She barely caught the tail end of Tai Li's sentence before glancing off toward the courtyard. A familiar thought crossed her mind, would Zuko ever grow the courage to just ask her out? Angela, however, though she kept her face composed, couldn't fully contain her feelings. She laughed and teased Tai Li like usual, but jealousy prickled beneath her skin. Tai Lung? That brute? That arrogant, ignorant, annoying Tai Lung? How could he be the one doing all the right things? How could he, of all people, treat Tai Li so well? It irritated her more than she'd admit. As the bell rang and the three girls left the academy grounds, chatting and laughing, none of them noticed the looming figure standing in the shade of a building across the street. A giant of a man in a worn robe, with most of his face concealed by a hood. But what was visible, barely peeking out from the folds, was the strange tattoo on his forehead, an eye. Mai noticed him first. Her steps slowed as her instincts kicked in. The man tilted his head back slightly, then thrust it forward violently. Mai's eyes widened in a flash. Jump! She screamed. The world exploded. A deafening boom rang out as fire and rubble burst where the girls had just been standing. The street cracked, and smoke swallowed the scene. People screamed in panic. The cloaked man didn't wait. He turned and walked away, his movements calm, as if assured his attack had succeeded. Underscore. Hours passed before a messenger arrived at Admiral Lung's estate. The news was like a blade through the air. Lady Tai Li has been injured, the messenger said grimly. There was an assassination attempt on Princess Angela. The princess and her two friends were hurt. Admiral Lung's face darkened. Without wasting a second, he summoned his son. Tai Lung appeared moments later, and together they rushed to the Royal Medical Clinic. The clinic was a fortress of concern and activity. Royal guards stood at every corner. General Iroh, Zuko, and the families of the girls all waited anxiously in the outer chamber. The mood was tense, heavy. Admiral Lung stepped forward and approached General Iroh. What happened? He asked urgently. Iroh turned to face him, his kind face solemn. An assassin. A well-known one. We believe he was targeting Princess Angela. All three girls were injured in the attack. He paused before adding, Mai suffered light burns on her arm. Angela has some cuts and bruises, but the worst. Iroh sighed. Tai Li stood directly between the assassin and the princess. She took the brunt of the blast. She is stable, but she will remain here for days. Silence fell over the group. Tai Lung said nothing at first, but his fists clenched at his sides. There was a low sound in the back of his mind. A voice warning him. The world is trying to take what is yours. Just like your destiny. You can't allow this. He felt his anger swelling, his control fraying. Still, his voice came out calm and low. What does this man look like? Both Admiral Lung and Iroh turned to him quickly, sensing something shift in the air. Heat radiated from Tai Lung's body. His stance was relaxed, but his eyes locked and burning with wrath and malice. They felt his presence turn wild and feral as if he was a wild beast. Iroh stiffened. Even Admiral Lung stepped back half a pace instinctively. Iroh hesitated to speak for a few moments, then relented under the weight of Tai Lung's malevolent gaze. He is tall. His limbs are mechanical, metal arms and legs. And, a tattoo of a third eye on his forehead. Tai Lung turned on his heel. Tai! Admiral Lung called after him. Where are you? I'm going to rip that guy apart, Tai Lung said without turning back, his voice low and dangerous. And nothing you say will change that. Without another word, Tai Lung left the clinic. Chapter 26, Brutality. Tai Lung arrived at the Royal Academy for Girls just as the sun dipped behind the palace walls. The scent of soot and ash still hung in the air, the ground scorched and cracked from the earlier explosion. Tai Lung stood silently at the entrance, his golden eyes narrowing. He began rotating his chi, channeling energy through his body to sharpen every sense beyond human limits. He took a deep breath, inhaling deeply. Every scent, every particle in the air became vivid. His pupils contracted slightly. Then his gaze shifted, north. He moved. From street to street, corner to alley, Tai Lung followed the trail. The smell was faint but distinctive: metal, oil, smoke, and sweat. The target had tried to mask his path, looping through crowded districts and backstreets. But it wasn't enough. Not for Tai Lung. Eventually, his path brought him to the poorest and most neglected part of the Fire Nation capital. Here the streets narrowed, and the buildings leaned like drunks on one another. At the edge of one such alley sat a dimly lit bar, its wood rotting, its patrons rough and uncaring. This was a place of secrets and blood. Tai Lung stepped inside. Dozens of eyes turned to him. Some are curious. Some are wary. Some were drunk. He paid them no mind. His gaze swept the room, until it locked onto the far corner. Two men sat at a table. One was enormous, shoulders hunched beneath a ragged cloak. His hood had slipped just enough to reveal a distinctive tattoo, an eye, right on the forehead. Tai Lung took a step forward. His voice rang through the entire bar, cold and sharp like steel. "Found you, vermin! I will rip you into pieces." The assassin narrowed his eyes, but didn't move. The tension exploded when a patron nearby rose from his stool, swaggering toward Tai Lung with a mocking grin. "Listen here, buddy. This place." He never finished. Tai Lung extended a hand. A torrent of blue fire erupted, engulfing the man and reducing him to a charred corpse in an instant. Screams rang out as patrons scrambled away in horror. Tai Lung advanced, his eyes gleaming with unrestrained bloodlust. The assassin inhaled, then hurled a glowing energy blast straight at him. Tai Lung didn't flinch. He raised a hand and countered with a blast of his own, his flames burning an unnatural blue. The two attacks collided midair, a violent explosion rocking the bar. Glass shattered. Smoke filled the room. From the smoke, Tai Lung emerged. But now, he was growling like a beast. The assassin's eyes widened in surprise. He braced, but too late. Tai Lung dashed forward, faster than anything the assassin fought before. Despite that, he still threw a punch with his metal arm, but Tai Lung caught it midair with ease. His other leg kicked upward with monstrous force. The assassin flew back, crashing into the wall with a crack. In Tai Lung's hand was the man's metal arm, torn clean from his body. Tai Lung crushed it in his fist, metal warping and falling in pieces to the ground. Then his gaze shifted to the other man at the table, the one who had been sitting with the assassin. The man trembled, eyes darting between Tai Lung and the money scattered on the table. It's a misunderstanding," he stuttered, hands raised in defense. Tai Lung moved like lightning. His fist struck the man's chest with devastating force. Crack crack crack. The sound of bones shattering echoed through the room. The man was hurled into the wall, sliding down it limply. Blood flowed from his mouth, nose, and eyes. He didn't move. Chaos broke out behind Tai Lung. Screams, boots stomping. A group of men rallied, forming a line. Some fell into bending stances, others raised weapons. Their voices overlapped, all yelling the same thing. "Stand down! Surrender now! You're outnumbered!" Tai Lung turned slowly. His eyes were cold, filled with nothing but rage. He didn't care who these people were, he wasn't going to spare anyone. Not a single soul tied to this assassin, even if remotely. Underscore 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 underscore. The bar had fallen silent, reduced to a blood-soaked ruin. Broken bodies, scorched walls, shattered furniture. Tai Lung stood alone amidst it for only a moment longer, then turned and left. His footsteps were steady, not hurried. Minutes later, Fire Nation guards arrived, drawn by the screams and smoke that had filled the night. What they found stopped them cold. The moment they stepped inside, their expressions changed. Horror took hold. One guard, upon seeing the state of the corpses, clutched his stomach and vomited on the spot. The others stood frozen, eyes wide, struggling to comprehend the massacre before them. Meanwhile, Tai Lung had already returned to the royal clinic. His entire trip had taken a little over an hour. Inside, Admiral Lung and General Iroh stood speaking in hushed tones in one corner of the room. As soon as Tai Lung entered, both men turned to him. Their eyes dropped instantly to the blood staining his clothes. Admiral Lung stepped forward, voice firm yet edged with concern. "Are you hurt?" Tai Lung, now composed and calm, shook his head. "It's not my blood." Iroh studied the young man, his brows furrowing. "Did you find the assassin?" he asked. "I did," Tai Lung replied coolly. "And the one who hired him?" "Both are dead." A deep, weary sorrow passed over Iroh's face. He had hoped the boy would show restraint. He didn't want to see another young soul devoured by hate, anger, and vengeance. Admiral Lung, however, crossed his arms, his tone sharp with disapproval. "You should have arrested them. There should have been a trial." Tai Lung's gaze turned cold. "A trial would have saved them from a painful fate I wanted them to have." Admiral Lung's frown deepened. He opened his mouth to speak again, but Tai Lung cut him off. "Father, they are dead. This is the end of the matter." The Admiral fell silent. He remembered the Agni Kai 2 years ago, how his son began behaving as if he was someone else, how he wanted to kill the Fire Lord. It was the same now, but he was colder. Crueler. And that both frightened him and caused him concern. That night, Tai Lung sat in silence outside Tai Li's room. The moon climbed and fell, and with it came the dawn. Tai Li's eyes slowly opened, blinking against the morning light. She found herself bandaged with family surrounding her, her parents, her sisters, all filled with relief. Their voices were soft and warm, welcoming her back with love. Soon, they invited Tai Lung inside. Together, they gently told her of the assassination attempt. Of how Angela had been the true target, and how Tai Li had been caught in the blast, injured badly. Their words were careful, not too heavy. Tai Lung stood by the door, arms crossed. "The assassin and his employer are both dealt with," he said simply, his tone steady and without detail. His words brought a wave of relief to Tai Li's heart. Her body was weak, but her spirit lifted slightly. The danger was over, and in her mind, justice had been done. The attacker was caught. That was enough. Elsewhere, in a grand chamber deep within the Fire Nation Palace, ministers and high-ranking officials gathered before the Fire Lord. The room was silent as a grim report was read aloud. It described the state in which the northern slum bar had been found. 16 bodies. All in unspeakable condition. Broken limbs. Skulls caved in. Limbs torn entirely off. Several bodies blackened and unrecognizable, burned alive. The worst among them, the report claimed, was believed to be the assassin responsible for the attempt on Princess Angela's life. His body was mutilated, limbs ripped apart, his head severed as if he was attacked by a wild ferocious beast. Another man was found in the same condition, identified as the assassin's employer. The ministers, seasoned veterans of war, paled as the words reached their ears. Some shifted uncomfortably in their seats, others looked disgusted. They had seen and heard of deaths before, but not like this. As for the employer, he had been identified as an ex-member of Angela's royal guard. Everyone believed he wanted revenge against the princess for some past grievance. No one thought too deeply into it, not after the unbelievable gory scene they found. General Iroh and Admiral Lung sat among them, and neither man could hide the shadow that passed over their faces. They knew who was responsible for this. The report, though clinical, painted an image in their minds of Tai Lung's wrath. Of what he became when provoked. A storm of unrestrained brutality. And above them, seated on his throne, the Fire Lord listened in silence. His face was hard to read, but his eyes darkened. This was not the news he had expected. Nor the news he had wanted, especially not after hearing of Tai Li's survival. Chapter 27, Just a Scar. A week had passed since the supposed attempt on Princess Angela's life. The palace had returned to its usual rhythm, but tension lingered, thick and cold beneath the surface. In the Fire Lord's council chamber, news of Tai Lung's brutal slaughter in the northern slum bar had spread. What had first been a rumor now stood confirmed. The massacre, 16 dead, bodies mangled and charred, was no longer something that could be ignored. The council was divided. Some officials stood firmly against Tai Lung, declaring his actions a clear violation of Fire Nation law. The man had taken justice into his own hands. Vigilantism, no matter the cause, was still a crime. Others, however, defended him fervently. Tai Lung had avenged both the princess and his own fiancée. His rage was righteous, they argued. His violence, justified. But the debate ended abruptly when General Iroh leaned forward and asked a single question. Who here is going to tell him he was wrong and must be punished? Silence fell like a guillotine. None of them dared to speak. Everyone remembered how Tai Lung had once insulted the Fire Lord himself and demanded an Agni Kai. How he had defied orders of his superiors, acted with mutiny and prevailed. The young man had power, and worse, the nerve to use it against anyone who stood in his way. And with the public calling him a hero, it became near impossible to touch him. Even Fire Lord Oze, who loathed Tai Lung with every fiber of his being, remained silent. He knew better than to ignite a fire he couldn't contain. He had decided that no soul must know the truth of the assassination and Tai Li is off limits. He was lucky this time Tai Lung had acted on his anger and killed indiscriminately without asking questions, but if this happens again, he might try to get into the bottom of the matter. In the end, the council came to a quiet, collective decision. Tai Lung was absurdly powerful, and dangerously bold. No one wanted to find out what would happen if he felt accused again. As for Tai Lung, he didn't know anything about the council nor did he care to know. He spent his days training and his evenings at the royal clinic, visiting Tai Li. Her recovery had been quick, thanks to expert care and her natural vitality. And now, after an entire week, the time had come, the bandages were to be removed. He stood at her side. Tai Li's parents were present, along with Angela and Mai. The atmosphere was hopeful, tense with anticipation. The medical staff moved carefully, unwrapping the last of the linen from Tai Li's face and shoulder. Then they froze. Tai Li blinked, noticing the sudden stillness in the room. What? She asked, confusion rising. What's wrong? No one answered. Fear took root in her chest. Give me a mirror, she whispered, dread blooming in her eyes. Her mother, hands shaking and eyes brimming with tears, reached into her bag and handed her a small mirror. Tai Li looked. The reflection stared back, a long, jagged scar stretched from her right cheek down across her jawline, curling down her neck and disappearing beneath her robe. It was raw, pink, and deep. Her hands trembled. Then she screamed. The mirror hit the floor, shattering into pieces. Tai Li buried her face in her mother's arms and wept uncontrollably. Her mother held her tightly, rocking her gently, crying with her. Angela, Mai, and Tai Lung left the room without a word. Out in the hallway, Angela's voice broke the silence. I knew the injuries might leave traces, she said, her voice low, but I never expected it to be that bad, to disfigure her. Mai, for once, looked visibly upset. Her arms crossed tightly, she shook her head. She didn't deserve this. Tai Lung said nothing. His eyes stared ahead, his expression unreadable. In truth, he didn't think the wound was that horrific. Yes, it scarred her face and was visible due to the lack of fur, but to him, it didn't change her that much. Still, he chose silence. He knew better than to voice that thought after seeing everyone's reaction. Some time later, Tai Li's parents emerged from the room. Her mother's eyes were red, cheeks soaked in tears. Her father looked drained, his face pale and empty. Tai Lung approached them quietly. May I go in? He asked. They looked at him, worry and fear in their eyes. Her father opened his mouth to object, then sighed and gave a slow nod. Her mother hesitated. Please, she's been through a lot, she said softly. But her husband placed a hand on her arm and nudged her gently to move aside. Tai Lung walked past them, silent. Inwardly, he wondered what did they think I was going to do to her. He pushed the thought aside as he entered Tai Li's room. Outside, Angela stood still, her arms crossed as a war brewed in her mind. Guilt gnawed at her, this was her fault. And yet, something selfish within her stirred, Tai Lung won't accept Tai Li with a face like that. That selfish thought battled with her self-disgust. Mai said nothing. Her hands clenched tightly. And silently, she prayed to Agni that Tai Lung won't hurt her more. Underscore. Tai Lung stepped quietly into the room. The light from the window stretched long across the floor, catching the fractured reflection of the mirror Tai Li had thrown. She sat on the bed, her knees drawn up, her face buried in her hands, shoulders trembling with each sob. He closed the door behind him and spoke gently, his voice more subdued than usual. How are you doing, Tai Li? At the sound of his voice, Tai Li turned her head away from him, covering her face as if to shield it from his eyes. Her voice broke as she spoke. My face is ruined, she whispered. I look like a monster. You don't, Tai Lung said without hesitation. Your face is fine. Tai Li gave a hollow, bitter laugh, the sound muffled by her hands. I don't need you to try and make me feel better, she muttered. I saw it. No one will blame you if you want to call the engagement off. I'm not calling anything off, I see no reason to do that, Tai Lung said firmly. She lowered her head more, hands still covering her face. Just stop, she said. Tell me what you really think of my face. Tai Lung hesitated. The silence lingered too long for her. You can't say it, Tai Li whispered, her voice trembling. I'm disgusting now. It's not that, Tai Lung replied at last. He found it hard to articulate an answer without making things worse. It's just. I don't think you'll like my answer. That only made her look away further, her whole body folding in on itself. Tai Lung sighed. Fine. I think you and everyone else are overreacting. It's just a scar, not a big deal. Tai Li looked up at him for the first time since he entered. Her eyes were wide with disbelief, then narrowed with anger. Just a scar. She snapped. My face is ruined. I knew you wouldn't like my answer, Tai Lung said, his tone unchanging. I don't think your face is ruined. The scar's not that bad. And if anything, it's proof of your strength, that you survived. I truly don't understand what the big deal is about this. It's not like you lost a limb. Tai Li stared at him. A war of emotions swirled in her eyes, anger, confusion, something close to relief. She didn't know how to feel. Should she be angry that Tai Lung seemed to care so little about her face? Or relieved that he genuinely didn't see her as disfigured and disgusting now? For a fleeting moment, she wondered if he was lying to make her feel better, but looking at him, at his calm, steady face, she could tell he was completely serious. Her breathing slowed. Some of the tension in her shoulders eased. You really don't hate how I look now? She asked softly. I don't, Tai Lung replied. I think it's fine. Besides, it's not like I proposed this engagement because your face had no scars. His voice took on a more irritated edge. And your parents and everyone else have been giving me strange looks the entire time, even though I didn't do or say anything. Seriously, it is just a scar. You all care way too much about skin condition. Tai Li blinked at him. He looked more annoyed at being judged than concerned about the wound on her face. And somehow, that was the most comforting thing of all. She laughed a soft, sudden, and genuine laugh. The first since her bandages had come off. Tai Lung glanced at her, slightly confused, but she shook her head, smiling through her tears. She had always known he acted and thought differently from everyone else, but she had never appreciated it more than now. When Tai Li's family and friends learned of Tai Lung's reaction, they were relieved and happy for her. They were glad her fiancé hadn't turned away from her, choosing instead to stay by her side despite her disfigurement. Even his own parents expressed their approval, with his father going so far as to say he was proud of him. As for Tai Lung, he remained genuinely puzzled by humans, even after living among them for 14 years, some of their actions and worries continued to elude him. Chapter 28, Spar. A few days had passed since Tai Li had been discharged from the royal clinic. Her body had healed completely, save for the scar that now marked her once flawless face. Though the wound remained, her spirit had steadily recovered, and today she insisted on accompanying Tai Lung to one of the army's training grounds. Tai Lung had been assigned to help train new recruits under the command of his father, Admiral Lung. Surprisingly, Angela and Mai had decided to tag along. Despite being Miss Gloom and Doom, Mai was concerned about Tai Li's emotional state and simply wanted to be nearby in case she was needed. Angela, however, had a different motivation altogether. Her golden eyes remained fixed on Tai Lung, filled with a quiet fire. She had come with the sole intent of challenging him to a spar. Tai Lung, naturally, noticed the intensity of Angela's glare. But given how talkative Tai Li was, ignoring Angela wasn't all that difficult. With Tai Li by his side, Angela's silent challenge became background noise. The moment the four arrived at the training ground, they were greeted by Tai Lung's vice-captain, Han. The experienced soldier walked up to him with a smile. It's been nearly a month, Captain. Heard you got engaged. Tai Lung gave a short nod and gestured to Tai Li. This is Tai Li, my fiancé. Han turned toward her. His eyes lingered on the scar that traced her cheek before sliding away, though not quickly enough. Tai Li noticed. She gave a strained smile in return. And these two, Tai Lung continued, pointing toward the others, are Mai and Angela. Han turned to them politely, but his expression shifted the moment he heard Angela. His gaze locked on her, and his eyes widened in realization. He immediately bowed low. We are honored to have you, Princess, he said with a sharp, respectful bow. Angela, who had begun to frown at how Tai Lung had introduced her last and without her title, now smiled at the satisfying display of deference. Han, meanwhile, cast a quiet glance toward his captain. You dare to burn the Fire Lord and call him a fire rooster, but the rest of us? We'd suffer if we failed to show proper respect to the royal family. Tai Lung noticed the unspoken grievance in Han's eyes but chose to ignore it. Where are the recruits? He asked. Please follow me, Han said, turning to lead them deeper into the camp. The four followed close behind until they reached an open ground. 30 young men stood in formation, standing with nervous looks. Do they know how to firebend? Tai Lung asked. Do you know what kind of training they've been through? Han nodded. They're all firebenders, but their training only covered the basics. They haven't been taught any military tactics or advanced techniques. Tai Lung nodded, absorbing the information, but before he could speak further, Angela stepped forward. I think we should show the recruits what level they should aspire to, she said coolly. Tai Lung turned his gaze to her, but Han was the first to respond, speaking with an edge of formality. You are wise beyond your years, Your Highness, he said. Angela smiled. A spar between me and Tai Lung. We'll just throw fire at each other, nothing else. Han visibly hesitated. We can't have you do that, Princess. I can spar with Captain Lung, if needed, he said weakly. The truth was, Han didn't want the princess to be humiliated by Tai Lung. The idea of the nation's princess being overwhelmed in front of new recruits was not something he could risk. This was not an Agni Kai, he had to prevent the spar or the blame would fall on his shoulders. Angela narrowed her eyes. Do you think this princess doesn't know how to spar? Of course not, Princess. Han faltered, then added with clear discomfort, it's just that sparring against the captain. It's fine, Tai Lung cut him off casually. And you didn't need to make excuses. You could have said that before we got here. I knew you were up to something since you were glaring at me more than usual. Angela's eye twitched, while Tai Li stifled a laugh. Mai, who rarely smiled, actually did. At once, the gathered soldiers moved, giving the two fighters ample space to spar. Angela stepped forward, eyes gleaming with focused challenge, promising pain with every glance. Tai Lung, on the other hand, remained completely relaxed. Han stood between the two firebenders, glancing back and forth with a worried face. He raised his hand and said firmly, if either one of you can't continue or if the fire causes harm, the match is over. He cast a lingering glance at Tai Lung, silently hoping his captain would go easy on the princess. With that, Han stepped away to clear the field. Angela took her stance with disciplined grace, sharp and focused. Across from her, Tai Lung remained upright and relaxed, his hands by his side, his posture bordering on nonchalance. Angela narrowed her eyes. Without warning, she thrust her arm forward, only 2 fingers extended. From the tips burst a compact flame of brilliant blue, slicing through the air toward Tai Lung. He raised a brow and casually waved his arm, dispersing the fire on impact. Surprised? Angela asked with a smirk. You're not the only one who can do that. Tai Lung nodded with a neutral expression. Didn't expect blue fire from you. Angela's smile vanished. Didn't expect it from me. The words landed like a slap. Was that how he saw her? Did he not consider her a prodigy in her own right? Did he think she could never match someone like him? Her eyes burned with a fresh wave of fury as she launched another blast, and then another, streams of fire from her fingers arcing through the air toward him. Tai Lung, unmoving from his position, effortlessly batted away every flame, his palm cutting through her attacks with ease. Angela gritted her teeth. Her fist tightened, her thrusted with punches, her legs kicked, releasing ever larger waves of flame. She increased her output, tried to alter her angles, her timing, but it made no difference. Tai Lung stood his ground, swatting away everything like a man fending off gnats. Are you not going to fight back? She snapped, her voice taut with frustration. It's a showcase for the recruits, Tai Lung replied evenly. No need for me to fight back. Angela growled, her fists trembling. Then show them what you can do. She snarled, instead of just defending. Tai Lung gave her a calm look. He thought for a moment. Perhaps it was time to remind everyone why they should respect him. Something to deter future annoyances. He gave a slight nod. Okay. Brace yourself. Angela's eyes narrowed. She inhaled sharply and sank into a defensive stance, her instincts suddenly on edge. Tai Lung stepped forward and threw a punch, not fast, but steady, and from it came a wave of fire. But not just a flame or a stream. It was a wall of fire, several meters wide, crashing forward like a tidal wave. Angela's eyes widened. Her breath caught in her throat as the fire roared toward her. I'm going to die, she thought in that frozen instant. There was no blocking this, no dodging it, no countering. The soldiers and spectators around the field stood in horrified silence, watching the inferno speeding across the training ground. It looked as though it would swallow Angela whole and incinerate everything in its path. But the massive wall of fire missed its target. It passed right by Angela, mere inches away. She remained rooted to the spot, her limbs locked in place, unable to move or speak. The sheer fire turned her face and the ground around her a bright shade of blue from reflected light. Then it was gone. Angela dropped to her knees, shaking. She looked to her side, where the fire had scorched a long, blackened trail across the earth. Her mind was blank. Slowly, she turned her gaze back to Tai Lung. There was nothing left of her pride. The flame of competition within her was extinguished. There was no way she could match that. Tai Li and Mai rushed to her side, their worry clear. Tai Li placed a hand on Angela's shoulder while Mai knelt next to her. She's fine, Tai Lung said flatly. The fire passed by her harmlessly. Angela didn't respond. A long silence followed. Then, slowly, Angela rose to her feet. Her eyes didn't meet anyone else's. I'm going back to the palace, she said. I'm tired. She turned and began walking away, her steps unsteady. Mai and Tai Li followed close behind, casting worried glances between each other and back at her. As they disappeared from view, Han approached Tai Lung with a shake of his head. You went overboard, he said quietly. You broke the princess. Tai Lung didn't seem remorseful. This way she won't annoy us too much if at all. Han snorted lightly, then asked, I hope you are right, I don't want to deal with royalty. So what do you think of her? At this rate? Tai Lung replied. She'll be a better bender than her father in a few years at most. She's the most talented firebender I have seen, for sure. Chapter 29, The Avatar. Angela sat in silence within the confines of her chambers, her gaze just staring at the space in front of her, her mind was far from the present. Her body no longer trembled, but inside, she was still shaking. She had been shaken to her very core. Never, not once, had she imagined a firebender could summon flames of such terrifying magnitude. It hadn't been just powerful, it had been absolute, a force of nature incarnate. No wonder her father lost to him. Fire Lord Oze, once the most feared man in the Fire Nation, never stood a chance against that monster. In truth, no one in the Fire Nation did. As she slowly regained her composure, one thought took hold of her mind, she had to report this to her father. The spar was no longer a personal matter or a bruised ego. It was a warning sign. She knew just how deeply her father hated Tai Lung. Their relationship was bitter and cold. But now it was more than just personal conflict. It was a threat. She recalled the words Tai Lung spoke 2 years ago during the Agni Kai, change the ruling family at the time. Angela had scoffed at the declaration, finding it too arrogant, even winning that Agni Kai didn't give him the ability to carry such a threat. But now? It sent chills down her spine. The threat was real and that monster has the ability to do it. She made her way to the Fire Lord's council chamber, her footsteps steady but purposeful. As the great doors opened and she stepped inside, every head in the room turned toward her. The heat of the central flame curtain cast long shadows across the polished floors. As always, her father sat behind the shimmering veil of fire, his posture regal and unreadable. Below him sat his closest ministers. This was not a war meeting, no generals or admirals were present. Oze's deep voice echoed through the hall. Why did you come here, Angela? She stepped forward and bowed low. Father, she said respectfully, I bring a report, concerning Tai Lung. She recounted the events of the spar, how she challenged him, how he responded, and the fire he unleashed. She described it with as much clarity as she could manage, though even now the memory made her hands tremble. Silence followed. No firebender, Oze said at last, his voice low, should be able to unleash that kind of power. One of the ministers nodded. The fire she describes matches the records of firebending masters during Sozin's comet, he said. But aside from that, no mention exists of flames that large or intense. Another minister added, the only thing that might come close to it, would be the avatar. In the oldest stories. Is it possible, that Tai Lung found a way to empower his firebending to that level? Oze turned his gaze to the man who had spoken, studying him with a calculating look. The minister immediately grew silent under the Fire Lord's piercing eyes. Then Oze spoke again, slowly, thoughtfully. The avatar has been missing for nearly a century. Despite our nation's efforts, he has not been found. What if he died, more than once, and Tai Lung is his latest reincarnation? The chamber fell into stunned silence. None of them had considered the possibility before, but now that it had been spoken aloud, it took root in their minds. The ministers exchanged glances. Could it be? It is possible, one finally said, hesitantly. It would explain his unnatural power and skill. Oze nodded slowly. And it explains his strange stance during the Agni Kai 2 years ago. Perhaps no one taught him, it simply came to him, naturally. As the avatar. Angela remained still, her eyes wide with realization. That would explain everything. His raw strength. His effortless mastery. His power that surpassed anything the Fire Nation had ever seen. How else could someone like Tai Lung even exist? She turned to her father, her voice low but urgent. If he is the avatar, what should we do? Oze's gaze hardened, and for a moment he didn't speak. His mind was clearly deep in thought, calculating the risks. Expose Tai Lung now and order his arrest? But what if they failed? What if the avatar turned against them? On the other hand, what if they were wrong? One of the ministers broke the silence. I don't think anything should be done, not yet. Tai Lung has contributed greatly to the war effort. He's on our side. Why risk losing the avatar? He could be our greatest asset. Another chimed in, he might not even know. It's not unheard of, some avatars don't realize their nature until much later in life. And there have been mistakes before, false reincarnations, misidentified candidates. Oze's frown deepened. The risk was immense. While Tai Lung was not the type to follow orders blindly, he was still from the Fire Nation and acted in the benefit of their nation, but a misstep could turn him into a terrible enemy. And acting too late, could allow that same enemy to grow even more dangerous. The Fire Lord considered every angle, every consequence. Finally, his voice cut through the silence like steel. First, we confirm if he truly is the avatar, Oze said coldly. Then we decide what to do. For now, nothing of this is to be shared. The flickering flames of the council chamber cast long shadows across the floor as silence lingered after Fire Lord Oze's final words. Ministers remained still, their eyes on the throne. Then, quietly, Angela stepped forward once more, her voice calm and measured. It might be more beneficial to spread that, she said. Oze's gaze turned to his daughter. He said nothing, but his expression beckoned her to continue. Angela offered a faint, knowing smile. We can spread rumors about my spar, and that Tai Lung is the new avatar. Whether it's true or not is irrelevant. What matters is perception. The idea that the missing avatar has returned, and is fighting for the Fire Nation, will raise the morale of our soldiers and terrify the other nations. They'll believe the avatar has chosen to support us. A murmur spread through the ministers seated around the chamber. Some leaned closer, intrigued. Oze remained silent, though his eyes had sharpened with interest. Angela paused for effect, then resumed. It will also restore the royal family's prestige. No one will say the Fire Lord lost to a child anymore. Instead, they'll say he lost to the strongest bender in the world, someone who holds the knowledge and instincts of countless lives. That's not a terrible defeat, it was a small misjudgment at most. Oze's eyes narrowed, the flames behind his throne flaring slightly. And what if that makes Tai Lung decide he is the avatar? What if he decides to bring balance to the world? His tone darkened. He is the son of a highly respected admiral, one with many loyal supporters. This could turn into a civil war. Angela nodded, unshaken. We won't address the rumors publicly, she said. Let them spread on their own. Then, we'll bring in one of the fire sages to examine Tai Lung and declare that he is not the avatar, regardless of the truth. She took another step forward, her voice growing more confident. At the same time, we quietly ask the Admiral to keep his son's supposed avatar status alive for the benefit of the nation. That way, Tai Lung will continue acting in ways befitting the avatar, thinking he's not. And our enemies, and our people, will believe the avatar is aiding the Fire Nation. We won't need to worry about them as the father and son follow a strict code of honor and morals. A few of the ministers exchanged impressed glances. One finally spoke, his voice respectful. The princess is wise beyond her years. Another nodded in agreement. To turn this into propaganda, brilliant. Angela allowed herself a satisfied smile. Oze leaned back on his throne, folding his hands. He regarded his daughter for a long moment, then finally spoke. Very well, he said. We shall follow the princess's plan. Underscore 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 underscore. The next day, the capital of the Fire Nation buzzed with excitement. From the bustling markets to the quiet tea shops, from the soldier barracks to the noble estates, a single rumor took hold of every conversation. Tai Lung, the son of Admiral Lung, is the new avatar. Eyewitnesses to the spar between him and Princess Angela shared their accounts in vivid detail, each telling more dramatic than the last. Some claimed the flames he summoned resembled a river of blue fire, others swore the ground melted from his power. The story spread like wildfire, igniting both awe and fear. And before long, it reached the Lung estate. Chapter 30, The Fake Avatar. Tai Lung sat in front of his parents in the quiet study of the Lung estate. The low hum of voices outside hinted at the storm of rumors sweeping through the capital. Tai Lung had an annoyed look on his face, his brows knitted. Who came up with this rumor? I can only bend fire. One element no matter how powerful doesn't make me the avatar. Admiral Lung met his son's gaze. After the strength you showed in that spar and the skill against the Fire Lord back then, it actually makes more sense than you just being a very talented young bender. Beside him, Tai Lung's mother reached over and placed a gentle hand on her son's knee. Maybe you really are the avatar, she said softly. And you just don't know it. It's happened before. Tai Lung sighed and rubbed his temples. There was no way he was the avatar, he didn't belong to this world to begin with, but his mother didn't know that. After a moment of silence, he spoke up clearly annoyed. What now? How do we clarify this stupid rumor? Admiral Lung didn't answer immediately. He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms as he looked thoughtfully at his son. We don't. Tai Lung blinked, surprised. What? Why not? His father's voice was firm, pragmatic. The Avatar is the greatest threat to the Fire Nation, the one we've been hunting for almost a century. Even the mention of his return shakes our soldiers and emboldens our enemies. But now they think he's fighting for us. The Admiral's eyes narrowed, his words deliberate and full of heavy meaning. For the future of our nation, you should play the role. I believe many of the ministers and high-ranking military officials will support me on this. Tai Lung's mother scowled, her expression darkening. You can't just push our son to be used like that. Admiral Lung turned to her calmly. It won't bring him harm. Just more prestige. He'll be seen as a symbol, respected, feared, admired. He returned his gaze to Tai Lung. I won't force you if you don't want to, he added, his voice softening slightly. But this could bring great benefits to our army. The room fell into silence. Tai Lung stared at the floor, weighing the words, his jaw tight. He didn't like it, it felt like a mockery of his past life, it was a repeat, but this time he knows he is not the chosen one. At least back then he had the chance to be the dragon warrior or dream to be the one at least. Now he is just a mirage, he will just be a fake avatar, knowing very well this is not his destiny. Still he understood the logic behind his father's words. After a long pause, he exhaled sharply. Fine, he said. But I won't be fighting in the war or conquering lands. I'll continue traveling like I always have. The Admiral smiled, nodding with satisfaction. That's actually what I want you to do, travel around, help fan the rumors. The more people see you, the better. Tai Lung's mother's eyes widened in disbelief. You're sending our son out again? The admiral gave a quiet nod. He will continue traveling wherever he wants and trying to find his path and goal in life. At the same time, he'll help our nation, indirectly. As a symbol, not just a soldier. She looked at her son, concern in her eyes. But then she sighed and gave a reluctant nod. The same day, Tai Lung found himself face to face with Tai Li. She had already heard the rumors that now spread through every corner of the capital. The moment she saw him, her usual cheerful expression was laced with worry. Is it true? She asked in a rush. That you're the avatar? Tai shook his head firmly. No. It's just a rumor. I'm not the avatar. Relief flickered across her face, but her brow remained furrowed. Tai continued, explaining the situation and his father's plan to let the rumors run unchecked and use them to bolster the army's morale. He added, almost reluctantly, I'll be leaving tomorrow morning. Early. Do you really need to leave so quickly? Tai Li asked, her voice softer this time, almost pleading. My father believes it's the right thing to do, Tai replied. His tone was even, accepting. And I'll go along with it. Tai Li nodded weakly, clearly unhappy with his decision. She lowered her eyes until Tai leaned slightly forward, a rare gentleness in his voice. If you want, you can come with me. Think of it as a vacation. Her eyes widened at the offer. But, what about the war? Tai shrugged casually. My participation is minimal. And even then, I'm too strong anyway. No harm will come your way. That made her smile a little, the brightness returning to her face for a fleeting moment. I still need to graduate from the academy, she said, half teasing but half serious. But I hope the offer will still stand. Next time you come back, I'll go with you. Tai nodded lightly, the corner of his mouth tugging upward. The next morning, Tai Lung stood at the docks as the sunlight reflected across the water, his ship ready to sail. His parents and Tai Li had come to see him off. Admiral Lung was the first to speak, his voice strong and steady. Tai, wherever you go, stay true to your teaching and your honor. And know that I am proud of you. His mother stepped forward next, her hands lingering on his arm. Stay safe. And don't forget to write to us. Lastly, Tai Li threw her arms around him, hugging him tightly. Don't forget me, she whispered. Tai smiled at them all, warmth stirring inside him, and bid them goodbye before boarding his ship. As he stepped onto the deck, he felt a strange tug within him. It was foreign, this sensation of being seen off, of being cared for in such a manner. Though it was his second departure, it still has a strange sensation to it. And yet, it was nice, knowing there were people waiting for him to return. After Tai Lung's departure, Admiral Lung wasted no time. He made his way to the palace, where the Fire Lord sat in council with his ministers and high-ranking officers. The air was heavy with expectation, the rumors of Tai Lung had already begun to dominate the city. Ozay's deep voice broke the silence. Admiral Lung, he said from behind the veil of flame. What do you think of these rumors? The Admiral answered calmly. They are just that, empty rumors. But they are not a bad thing. Quite the opposite. He went on to echo Azula's earlier claim, that the whispers would raise the morale of their soldiers and strike fear into their enemies. We must maintain it, he concluded, and I have already sent Tai Lung to spread the rumors even further across the Earth Kingdom. The officers immediately nodded, voices murmuring in agreement as they began to see the benefits. But behind the curtain of fire, Ozay clenched his teeth. This was the conclusion he had wanted, yes, but not like this. Admiral Lung had stolen the initiative, shaping the narrative before Ozay himself could reclaim dignity in the eyes of his court. Still, he could not contradict the Admiral now. In the end, Ozay gave a slow nod. It is a wise decision, he said at last, his voice cool and controlled. Spread the rumors further. Let the world believe it. And in his mind, Ozay's thoughts burned hotter than the flames before him. At least in the eyes of the public, I lost to the Avatar and there is no shame in that. Far out at sea, with the waves carrying their ship steadily forward, Tai Lung stood at the bow before his gathered crew. At the forefront was his vice-captain, Han, who crossed his arms with a faint smile. Captain, Han said, his voice carrying across the deck, everyone wants to know, are you the Avatar or not? Tai Lung's expression remained calm as he replied firmly. I am not the Avatar, I am just a powerful and skilled bender. But in front of the world, you will act as if I am the avatar. My father believes this will boost morale and crush our enemies. A murmur spread through the crew, but no one spoke against it. Tai Lung let the silence linger for a moment before continuing. We will keep traveling as we did in the past. Nothing will change. Our duty now is to spread the rumors, and from time to time, aid the war effort when needed, mainly saving our soldiers if needed. Han nodded, his grin widening. So, Captain Avatar, any thoughts on where to go next? Tai Lung gave a small shrug, looking out at the endless horizon. Any new place will do. If anyone has a place in mind to explore, we'll head in that direction. Immediately, the crew began calling out suggestions, laughter and excitement filling the ship. To them, Tai Lung travel is an open vacation. Tai Lung listened quietly, his eyes fixed on the distance. Though he didn't like the rumors, one thing remained true, no matter the world's belief, his path was still his own and one day he would find his destiny. Chapter 31, Notes/explanation of the previous chapter. Many readers wondered why Tai Lung would agree to something so out of character. And they are right, the Tai Lung from the moment he first reincarnated would never have done this. But the Tai Lung in the story is not the same person anymore. His mentality has been shifting slowly across the chapters. Where Tai Lung started. Tai Lung began as someone bitter from his failure, angry from the betrayal, weighed down by self-doubt after his defeats. When he became human, he carried all of this with him. Instead of confronting it, he buried it, numbing himself with training, clinging to a simple goal, become strong again and then the strongest. Subtle changes shown throughout the story. Alienation, he can't connect with people normally. He still sees humans as strange, and never truly feels part of their world. Displacement, he doesn't see himself as someone from this world. He was a Kung Fu master first, not a bender, and definitely not a citizen of the Four Nations. The irony of his purpose being fulfilled, he took down Oze and Bumi, the strongest benders of their nations. He achieved his goal, but it felt empty, almost undeserved, because the chi he brought with him made it too easy. To him, it was cheating. Loss of direction, with his goal gone, he has no path left. Nothing to move toward. Self-doubt, even back in Chapter 1, he began questioning himself. He saw versions of himself in others, people who chose forgiveness where he chose anger. He realized that in this world, he is the lesser person. Circumstances didn't matter in his eyes. Tai Lung's emotional state now. He is empty. He is depressed, not in the sad all-day sense, but in the real psychological sense. Apathy. Numbness. Lack of motivation. Not caring about consequences. Not caring about expectations. Not caring about himself. So actions he once would have rejected immediately now feel pointless to resist. Reputation doesn't matter. Nothing does. He only resembles the original Tai Lung when his rage momentarily takes control, that instinctive part of him that never died. Why he goes along with his father now. He sees his father as the father who didn't betray him. And since he has no direction anyway, he simply follows the flow of his father's words. He is drifting in this world aimlessly, traveling around in hope of finding something that gives him purpose again. On the fake avatar decision. People called it stupid in-world, but the logic makes sense from the character's perspective, not the reader's. The avatar has been missing for 98 years. Readers know he returns soon, characters don't. To them, he might appear next year, in another 100 or maybe never. If the avatar reappears the next day, the Fire Nation loses nothing. It's propaganda. A tool. Not a replacement for the real thing. Why did Tai Lung tell his ship he would be the fake avatar? Because he simply doesn't care. The other nations won't believe it. A man bending blue fire, hotter and larger than anything seen before, a rarity only ever associated with past avatars, in terms of raw power, would absolutely spark fear and rumors. In their eyes, he becomes an evil avatar who simply favors fire. TLDR, check out symptoms of depression and try to compare it to the out-of-character behavior. Chapter 32, I Am the One. In the north, in a small Earth Kingdom town called Ershi, Tai Lung walked alone beneath the burning sun. He had traded his familiar garb for the plain green of the countryside and wore a conical hat pulled low over his brow so that no one would take special notice. The town still belonged to the Earth Kingdom, the Fire Nation's reach had not quite stretched this far yet, and that fact gave the place a brittle sort of quiet difference from the towns Tai Lung visited in the past. Tai Lung had wanted to see an Earth Kingdom town untouched, at least directly, by the flames of war. He wished to watch ordinary people move through ordinary days and see how a place not yet controlled by the Fire Nation looked like. As he walked the main street, he noted at once how badly the town had been battered. Houses leaned as if tired and the faces he passed carried the small, resigned lines of hardship. From a single glance, a visitor could tell these people were having a hard time. He wandered until he came upon the only restaurant in Ersh, a squat building with a sagging sign and a door that protested when opened with a loud creak. Tai Lung paused, weighing the decision, then stepped inside. The room smelled faintly of smoke and boiled cabbage. Behind that counter sat an elderly man, his hands folded. A young boy, perhaps 2 or 3 years younger than Tai Lung, was wiping tables. "Welcome," the old man said, smiling when Tai Lung approached. "You must be a traveler. It's rare for people to pass through here." Tai Lung inclined his head. "I am traveling the Earth Kingdom," he said simply. "I wish to see the different towns and sights." "Our town doesn't have much to offer," the old man said. "But I hope you enjoy your stay nonetheless." "Thanks, can I get the menu?" Tai Lung said. The old man's smile dimmed. "We have no menu," the man said. "It has been rough around here. We serve rice and cabbage soup only." "That's fine," Tai Lung said. "Give me a bowl of each." He reached for his coins. "How much?" 6 copper coins, the old man answered. Tai Lung paid, sat at a corner table, and waited. Not long after, the young man who was cleaning earlier came carrying 2 steaming bowls. "Thank you," Tai Lung said quietly before starting to eat. The boy turned to leave but paused mid-retreat, then returned, closer this time. "My name is Tao," the boy said, voice low but earnest. "I heard from my grandpa you are a traveler. Would you mind sharing news? How is the war going?" Tai Lung looked at him for a moment, the boy's eyes were bright with something like a promise and a stubborn grievance. "Is there no news here?" Tai Lung asked. Tao shook his head. "Not much reaches us." "Not much to share, then," Tai Lung said. "Skirmishes and battles are happening all over the Earth Kingdom. The Fire Nation pushes forward, taking land bit by bit." At the name of the enemy, Tao's eyes flared with the unmistakable heat of anger. "One day I'll join the Earth Kingdom army and help drive the Fire Nation out," he said, the words almost falling from his lips like a vow. Tai Lung noted the anger behind them but did not speak. The old man, who had been listening with a tired look, rose from his stool and waved a hand as if to sweep the boy's words away. "Tao, enough of that talk," he scolded gently. "I told you I won't allow you to join the war. It is not your role to fight or drive the Fire Nation away." Tao's face hardened. "And who is supposed to do that?" he retorted. "We must fight. I must avenge my father. One day the Avatar will return," the old man said. "He will come back and save the world." Tao's reply was a blow, sudden and bitter. "You've been saying that for decades. He didn't return. You've heard the rumors, the Avatar joined the Fire Nation." "No," the old man argued, the despair in his voice trying to brace itself with hope. "Those are false rumors. The Avatar would never do that. I know he will come back one day and save the world." "He won't," Tao said, and the words dropped like stones. "You're waiting for nothing, all of you are, it's the reason we are like this. It's why my father died." "You mean not resisting the Fire Nation?" Tai Lung asked suddenly. Tao turned toward him, his fists clenched, his jaw trembling with barely restrained fury. "For 100 years we've been waiting for the Avatar," he said bitterly. "The Fire Nation has been taking our land piece by piece, killing our families and still, the Earth Kingdom waits. If the nations had united, they would have crushed the Fire Nation long ago. Instead, they chose to fall one by one." The old man's hand trembled. "It is the Avatar's duty to bring balance and peace to the world," he said solemnly. "We are waiting for him to fulfill that duty." Tao's eyes flashed. "My father was conscripted into the army to fight the Fire Nation," he said, his voice rising. "He died far away because people like you decided to wait quietly for the return of a myth." The old man looked as though he had been struck, his shoulders sagging under the weight of the boy's accusation. Before he could answer, Tai Lung spoke. "He is not wrong," Tai Lung said. "If the Earth Kingdom had truly united, the Fire Nation would never have expanded this far. And if the Water Tribes had stood with them, they could have pushed the Fire Nation back to their islands. Even on the day of the comet, if the two nations had aided the air nomads, they might have survived the extermination. The old man's eyes grew troubled at his words. Tao, however, looked at Tai Lung with renewed fire. So you agree we should fight? That we should defend our homes? He asked eagerly. I will join the war, and one day, I'll avenge my father. I'll kill the monster with the blue flames. Tai Lung froze. Slowly, he asked, if you don't mind me asking, how did your father die? Tao's expression darkened. My father died defending Omashu, he said, his voice shaking with rage. The messenger told us our army fought bravely, until a monster with blue flames appeared from behind, killing everyone in front of him. The Fire Nation is nothing but a horde of monsters and murderers. Tai Lung let out a quiet sigh, and for a moment, his eyes seemed to dim with something like regret. There was no battle, he said softly. The army of Omashu, under King Bumi, laid a trap for the Fire Nation. They slaughtered 5,000 soldiers, then tried to drown 5,000 more. The blue-flamed monster you speak of led the rescue. Yes, he killed, but only those who stood between him and the trapped men. He did not kill more than necessary. The Fire Nation does not encourage killing without reason, but... He paused, his voice dropping lower. Some will, and this is war. None is innocent in it regardless of the reason behind their actions. Tao stared at him, his face paling. What are you saying? Are you a Fire Nation spy? No, Tai Lung said simply. I am not a spy. But that is what happened that day. I know nothing I say will ease your pain, and I cannot undo what has been done, but I am sorry for your father. Truly. He stood, his chair scraping softly against the floor. You are right not to trust the Avatar. But don't join the war. It will only bring you suffering. He reached into his robes and set a small pouch on the table. The sound of coins clinking echoed faintly through the quiet room. I know this money is worth nothing compared to your father's life, Tai Lung said, but it's all I can offer. Tao and the old man stared at him, too stunned to speak. The young man's anger faltered, replaced by confusion. Tai Lung turned toward the door and began to walk away. Wait. Tao's voice broke the stillness. Sir. Were you there that day? At the battle to defend Omashu. Tai Lung stopped at the threshold. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he turned his head slightly, his face half-shadowed beneath the brim of his hat. Yes, he said quietly. I led the rescue of the Fire Nation soldiers. And I am the one who killed your father. Both Tao and the old man stood frozen, their eyes wide, their minds refusing to accept the words. Before either could move, the air around Tai Lung ignited in an instant, blue fire erupted around him, swirling like a living storm. The old man stumbled back, shielding Tao with an arm as the light filled the small room. Then, as suddenly as it had come, the fire vanished. Tai Lung was gone. Chapter 33, The Real Avatar. 2 years passed in the blink of an eye. Tai Lung's life became a cycle of travel, training, and war. From dusty villages to fortified Earth Kingdom outposts, he left his mark wherever he went. Skirmishes flared across the land, and in each one, his might was displayed in full view of friend and foe alike. The rumors followed him, growing with every battle. To the Fire Nation, he was no longer just Admiral Lung's son, he was the Fire Avatar, a living weapon who struck fear into their enemies. Soldiers marched taller, prouder, when his name was spoken. But in the Earth Kingdom, his shadow grew darker, fear spread across the land. To them, the Avatar had returned as a monster, a traitor to balance, now waging war at the Fire Nation's side. Mothers hushed their children with his name, generals and resistance cursed their luck at hearing he was spotted nearby. Yet for Tai Lung, the war was just a minor effort in his life. Wherever he roamed, he took the time to write home. He responded to letters, letters carried the warmth of his mother's love, the weight of his father's pride, and Tai Li's longing words, each one reminding him he had people waiting. Vice Captain Han never failed to remind him, don't forget gifts for your fiancé. And so, whether it was a finely carved trinket or a silk scarf dyed in Earth Kingdom hues, Tai Lung made sure to send gifts to Tai Li. Today, he and his crew stopped at a Fire Nation-controlled southern base to resupply. The harbor was busy with cargo being hauled and soldiers moving about when another ship limped into port, a worn and damaged vessel that stood in stark contrast to the well-kept Fire Nation fleet. From it disembarked a boy with a scarred face and a weary gait, Prince Zuko. Behind him, as ever, walked the wise figure of General Iroh. Tai Lung had heard the stories. Banished for disrespecting the Fire Lord during a war council, the prince was sentenced to exile until he accomplished something worthy of returning. A punishment cruel enough that even soldiers thought of the Fire Lord went too far with it. As Tai Lung's sharp eyes lingered on the pair, Iroh glanced up and noticed him. The old general's brows lifted in recognition, and after whispering something to his nephew, he turned back to Tai Lung and raised a hand in warm greeting. Zuko, by contrast, froze only for a heartbeat before averting his gaze. He did not meet Tai Lung's eyes. Tai Lung decided he didn't care. He turned away and focused on his ship's resupply. But it wasn't long before a familiar voice carried behind him. Tai Lung. Tai Lung turned, finding Iroh approaching with his usual easy smile, though Zuko was nowhere in sight. Shouldn't you be at the prince's side? Tai Lung asked bluntly. Iroh's smile dimmed into a sigh. The prince is having a difficult time. He feels lost in this world. Zuko is not a bad person, but he is ashamed to face you, after what happened years ago. Tai Lung gave a small nod. That's okay. I'll be leaving soon anyway. Iroh hesitated, his hands folding behind his back. Perhaps, you might meet him? Talk to him. Sometimes, a familiar voice can help more than you think. Tai Lung shook his head. We're not at the level where we can talk comfortably. What he needs is to get that achievement his shitty father demands and return home, or learn that he didn't lose his honor, that he was not in the wrong to begin with. Nothing I say will change that. The old general's expression softened with regret. He leaned closer and lowered his voice. Zuko is too angry and bitter to accept Oze for what he truly is. And that achievement, as they call it, is a cruel mask. His true mission is to find the Avatar. The real one. Tai Lung froze, his sharp golden eyes narrowing. That's no mission. That's a sentence. You may as well have told him to never return. Iroh's shoulders sagged. My brother, he is too cruel. Zuko didn't deserve this. For a long moment, Tai Lung was silent. Then he let out a low growl of disdain. I knew that Fire Rooster was a piece of shit. But to think he'd go that far with his own son? He's lower than dirt. A piece of shit, through and through. Iroh couldn't help but chuckle quietly. My brother would not be pleased to hear you call him that. Tai Lung snorted. If he has an issue, we can always have a second Agni Kai. General Iroh laughed at that and said I highly doubt my brother would agree to that. So Tai Lung, I heard you refused the promotion to a commander. Tai Lung replied I prefer to remain a captain, a single ship and free to go wherever I want. On the other hand, being a commander is a pain. Iroh shook his head hearing that getting promotion is the dream of every soldier, except for Tai Lung apparently. Tai Lung glanced at Zuko's ship and asked how come your ship was damaged like that? Did you encounter some water tribe raiders? Iroh didn't answer immediately, he looked at Tai Lung carefully then said nothing major, just an accident in the South Pole. Tai Lung nodded then turned his back and started walking toward his ship. It was nice meeting you here, General Iroh. I wish you and Zuko luck. You'll need it. The general stood there, watching as the younger man walked away without a single backward glance. A sigh escaped him, heavy and sorrowful. He had hoped Tai Lung might still hold a spark of friendship for Zuko, something to ease the boy's suffering, especially after the unexpected events in the South Pole. But it was clear to him now, Tai Lung had moved beyond such ties, leaving the prince to walk his exile alone. Iroh wondered what Tai Lung would do when he meets the real Avatar. Days later, Tai Lung was training near the rocky shore, his strikes sharp and full of power as waves crashed behind him. The salty wind tugged at his clothes, but his focus was entirely on his training, until Han emerged from the nearby forest, his voice interrupting the steady rhythm of Tai Lung's movements. Captina. The truth is out. Tai Lung straightened, lowering his stance, a brow raised. What truth? Han crossed the sand toward him, his expression both serious and strangely amused. That you're fake. The real Avatar has been found. For a moment, Tai Lung simply blinked at him, then let out a low hum. Is that so? And how reliable is this news? It should be true, Han replied quickly. It's said Prince Zuko found the Avatar in the South Pole and failed to capture him. Here, look at this. From within his robes, Han produced a paper and handed it over. Tai Lung unfolded it and studied the crude but clear drawing, the face of a young bald boy, an arrow painted across his forehead in stark lines. Han pointed at it. This is the avatar. He's a young airbender, traveling with a flying bison. Tai Lung hummed again, this time with more interest, his golden eyes narrowing. So that's why Zoku's ship was damaged. General Iroh must have tried to hide the truth. I guess he wanted me to help his nephew hunt the avatar. Tai Lung's eyes narrowed as he continued, but this is strange, the avatar disappeared for more than 100 years, and now he's returned as a young airbender. Could it be that he completed a full cycle already? Or perhaps... His lips curled faintly. Perhaps this isn't the avatar at all. Just another fake. Han shrugged. Who knows what's going on with him? But from eyewitnesses, he bent both air and water. That made Tai Lung's smile widen. All the better. I would like to meet this avatar. He might prove to be a true challenge. Han chuckled under his breath, shaking his head. I expected nothing less from you. But then his voice faltered as his gaze snapped to the distance. His eyes widened. Tai Lung, noting the sudden change in his expression, turned. Over the horizon, above the glittering waves, a massive white shape floated against the sky. Enormous, furred, with wide horns and a flat, bear-like face. A flying bison. Tai Lung chuckled, his eyes glinting. Well, look at this. He's coming right toward us. This must be fate, don't you think, Han? Han shifted uneasily. Are you going to capture him? But Tai Lung did not answer immediately. His entire focus was locked on the creature, and on the boy who surely rode upon its back. After some time, Tai Lung chuckled and said, good thing we are not wearing the military uniform. We wouldn't want to scare the avatar. Who would have thought wearing the nearby resort clothes will help us? Han replied, Captain, don't jump to conclusion, we don't know if the avatar will land or will continue on his path. Tai Lung didn't reply this time, he waited for the bison to come closer. Chapter 34, Meeting the Avatar. Avatar Ong, the last airbender. That was who he was, though sometimes he wished it weren't true. After 100 years of being trapped in ice, he had woken to a world unrecognizable from the one he had known. The Fire Nation had declared war, not just against one land, but against all the nations. Balance was shattered, peace destroyed, and misery seemed to hang in the air like smoke. The guilt never left him. He knew the truth, his escape, his selfishness, his fear of responsibility, that was why the world had suffered alone for 100 years. He carried that weight every day. But now he was on a journey to set things right, to master all four elements and restore the balance he had once abandoned. At his side were Katara and Sokka. They had chosen to come with him, to help him complete his destiny. Together they soared across the endless sea on Appa's broad back, heading toward the Earth Kingdom. After hours of flight, the endless blue finally gave way to a smudge of green on the horizon. Finally! Land! Sokka cheered, nearly falling off in his excitement. I missed the ground. Katara laughed softly. We only left the last island a few hours ago, Sokka. Ong smiled at their banter. There must be a village nearby. I remember lots of them being close to the Earth Kingdom shoreline. As Appa glided lower toward the coast, a cry rose up from below. Someone was calling. The three leaned over the saddle, peering down at two men dressed in unfamiliar grey clothing with red stripes. Sokka frowned. That doesn't look like Earth Kingdom clothes to me. Katara tilted her head. Maybe they need help. Let's find out. Ong leaned forward. Yip yip. Appa's great body tilted downward and descended, the wind rushing past as they landed near the strangers. The younger of the two men stepped forward calmly, his eyes fixed on them. I must admit, he said evenly, for a moment I thought you wouldn't come down. Ong offered his friendliest smile. Hello there. We heard you calling. Do you need help? The man shook his head. No, I don't. I am Tai Lung. And I just heard about the return of the Avatar and his flying bison. I wanted to meet the legendary Avatar in person. From behind him, Katara and Sokka peeked out, eyes narrowing with suspicion. Ong straightened a little. It's nice to meet you, Tai Lung. I'm Ong, and yes, I am the Avatar. These are my friends, Katara and Sokka, from the Southern Water Tribe. Tai Lung's voice was polite, almost warm. Nice to meet you. So, Avatar, is it true you can bend all four elements? Ong rubbed the back of his neck, his smile turning awkward. Well, not yet. I've mastered airbending, but I still need to learn the others. Tai Lung's golden eyes narrowed in thought. So you still have much to learn. A little disappointing, I must admit. I had hoped you already mastered them all. And, how come you're still young? Did you complete a full cycle? Sokka scowled and cut in. Buddy, what's with all the questions? Is that how you talk to someone you just met? Tai Lung didn't seem fazed. I'm just curious. The Avatar disappeared for 100 years, and he's the only thing the Fire Nation fears. It's only natural to ask, no. Ong shifted uneasily, but he forced a smile. I was trapped in ice. I was freed just recently. I see. Tai Lung nodded slowly. So it's safe to assume you can't bring balance just yet. You'll need time to grow, to become truly powerful, as the legends say. Well, Avatar, I sincerely hope you won't be taken down before you master the 4 elements. Thanks, Ong said awkwardly. Katara stepped forward, her chin high. Ong will master the 4 elements. He will defeat the Fire Lord and bring balance back to the world. Tai Lung chuckled. Honestly, beating the Fire Rooster won't bring balance, it wasn't balanced even before him. But I suppose that's a first step. He lifted a hand and pointed toward the trilene. Don't go that way. There's a Fire Nation base nearby. You don't want to get trapped at the start of your journey. The 3 of them blinked in surprise at his warning, but they managed to thank him all the same. I look forward to meeting you again, Tai Lung said, turning to leave. When you've mastered the 4 elements. Ong climbed back into Appa's saddle, but paused. Something was gnawing at him. Wait, how did you know I was back? How did the news spread so fast? Tai Lung turned, smiling faintly. He raised his hand, and flames burst to life in his palm. The 3 froze, eyes wide. The Fire Nation already knows, Tai said smoothly. His smile widened as the fire burned in his hand. As I said, I look forward to meeting you in the future, Avatar. And with that, he walked away, the silent man at his side following. Ong, Katara, and Sokka sat frozen in place. They couldn't believe they had just spoken so casually with a firebender the whole time. I knew their clothes were strange, but to think they are firebenders. Sokka said in a shocked tone. But why would they speak with us like that? Why warn us of the Fire Nation base instead of tricking us into a trap? Katara asked, her tone confused. None of this made sense to her. Ong was silent for some time, then said with a smile, just like there are bad people like the Fire Lord, the Fire Nation must have some good people. Not only did Tai Lung warn us, but did you hear what he called the Fire Lord? Fire Rooster. Sokka blinked then said with a nod, yeah, as strange as it is, a firebender calling the Fire Lord a Fire Rooster must mean Tai Lung doesn't approve of the Fire Lord and the war. He wants you to master all 4 elements and bring balance to the world. On the other side, Han walked behind Tai Lung silently. When they were far enough from the Avatar and his group, he spoke. Captain, not only did you not try to fight or capture the Avatar, but you even warned him of our base. That's treason. Tai Lung replied casually, you heard him. He has only mastered 1 element. Until he masters all 4, he is not worthy to be called the Avatar. One day, if he becomes truly master of the 4 elements, I shall challenge to a battle. As for now, I won't initiate attacks on him or anyone for that matter. If the Fire Rooster or anyone has an issue with my choices, they can challenge me to an Agni Kai. 4 years and I still don't understand you, Han said. I am not proud of many things I have done and I still don't know why I was born in this world. I would rather not inflict more harm on others, Tai Lung replied. Han sighed and said, I won't report our encounter with the Avatar or any of your words. After a moment of silence between the two, Tai Lung said, you know, I am a little jealous of that bison. The Avatar and his group can travel so quickly and easily in the sky. It would be nice if I could fly as well. Tai Lung stopped in his tracks then said, we can propel ourselves with fire. If I use enough power and control, I should be able to fly, no? Now that's something worth trying. What do you think? Han shook his head and said, this is madness. After their encounter with Tai Lung, the group decided to heed his advice and instead move along the southern shoreline, far enough to avoid the Fire Nation army and close enough to find any of the southern Earth Kingdom islands. As they traveled, they unknowingly came across Kyoji Island. As the group landed on the island, they were quickly captured by the Kyoji warriors and led into the village for interrogation, tied and blindfolded. You three have some explaining to do. Who are you and why did you come to our island? The chief of the island asked. And if you don't answer all of our questions, we are feeding you to the sea fish, a girl added. Show yourselves, cowards. Sokka spoke loudly. The girls stepped forward and removed the blindfolds from the trio. Sokka, looking around at the painted faces of the girls, asked, Where are the men who captured us? There are no men. Now answer our questions, the girl next to the chief answered. Yes sure, as if we would believe a bunch of girls did that, Sokka replied sarcastically. A bunch of girls? It looks like the fish will eat well tonight, the girl replied threateningly. No, don't hurt him. My brother is just an idiot sometimes, Katara spoke up in fear for Sokka. It is all my fault. I wanted to ride the elephant koi fish, Aang answered. How do we know you are not from the Earth Kingdom and you are here to spy on us? Kyoji has nothing to do with this war. The chief asked sternly. Aang's face brightened as he said, This island is named for Kyoshi? I know Kyoshi. And how could you possibly know her? She was born here 400 years ago, the chief replied with disdain. I know her because I am the Avatar, Aang answered with a confident smile. There was a moment of silence, then the chief spoke, They are liars and impostors. Feed them to the fish. The Kyoji warriors all took a stance. Katara spoke up, Aang, do something. Show them you are the Avatar. Aang quickly broke free from his restraints using airbending. He flew high in the air, then descended slowly, showing his mastery of airbending. Once he landed, he spoke up again, I am Aang, the last airbender and the Avatar. Aang looked at them, expecting them to believe him. Instead, he was captured again and tied tighter than before. You think you can trick us? Someone like you can't be compared to the Avatar, one of the Kyoji warriors spoke with absolute certainty. But I am really the Avatar. I just showed you airbending, Aang replied. Cease your lies, impostor. We have already met the Avatar, the leading girl replied, and the rest of the Kyoji warriors nodded in agreement. Aang, Sokka and Katara were flabbergasted by that. Aang was the Avatar. Chapter 35, The Fire Avatar. Katara said, The one you met is the impostor, Aang is the real Avatar. The chief replied, The Avatar we met was an honorable man with unheard power. It is clear to me that you are an impostor. Aang said quickly, I can prove it to you. I mastered airbending and can show you that I can bend water a little. I still need to learn to master the 4 elements. The chief frowned, clearly not believing him, then said, Bring a jar of water. If he can't bend it, he and his companions will be fed to the fish. One of the Kyoji warriors left while the others remained focused on the trio. Shortly after, the girl returned with a jar of water and put it in front of Aang, while 2 more Kyoji warriors freed Aang but were clearly on guard for any sudden movement. Aang moved to show them he could lift the water and move it in the air, which left the Kyoji warriors and chief shocked. The chief spoke, How could this be? He can bend water and air. He is the real Avatar. The rest of the Kyoji warriors stood there shocked as well. Sokka spoke with a conceited tone, We told you he is the Avatar, and it looks like you are easy to trick. All the girls stared at him dangerously, clearly not happy with his words. The chief said, Free them. The girls freed the group, but when it came to Sokka, they were clearly reluctant to let him go. The chief spoke again, This village is under Fire Nation control. Please leave, Avatar. We are not going to let the Fire Nation know of your arrival. The group were taken aback again, and Aang said, How could you be under Fire Nation control? The chief replied, The Fire Nation came years ago, led by the Fire Avatar. They defeated our warriors and declared this island their territory. They didn't kill or harm anyone, just a simple agreement to not hurt the Fire Nation people and interests in return for our cooperation. The Fire Avatar even helped us solve our famine problem without asking anything in return. Katara spoke, The Fire Avatar? Does the Fire Nation have a person walking around calling himself the Avatar? And why would he help you? The chief replied, It is not that simple. When the Fire Avatar came by, he didn't claim himself to be an Avatar or anything special, just a Fire Nation captain. He carried himself with honor and pride, he made sure no harm was brought to us and as I said he solved the famine problem. Later on when we heard of the stories, we believed it. We believed he helped the island because he was the new Avatar. The chief continued, what truly set him apart from the rest was his terrifying blue flame, a flame unlike anything we have seen or heard of. He wielded lightning that could defeat a giant sea monster. Even without bending, he is still unmatched. When he came here, he defeated all of our Kyoji warriors without bending and unarmed. One of the girls added, he went easy on us. We saw him later destroy rocks with his bare hands. The chief nodded at that and said, when he came here, he was probably your age, avatar. It was until later we heard the stories of the fire avatar, a bender so powerful that he is a one-man army. He could defeat earth armies on his own. Sokka said, there is no way the Fire Nation has a bender like that. The chief replied, they do, and he is the real deal, the most powerful bender in the entire Fire Nation and probably in history. It is why everyone believes he is the avatar who uses fire only. The chief said calmly, please leave this island. We don't want to be dragged into the war. And we owe the fire avatar a great debt for helping us. The trio looked at each other with troubled and confused faces. Ong and the rest of his group left Kyoji Island immediately. They still couldn't believe what they had heard about the so-called fire avatar, a bender so powerful that everyone believed him to be the real avatar. The fact that he acted with honor and had even saved a village made it feel even more unreal. Ong decided their next destination would be Omashu, where he used to visit his friend Bumi and play with the world's greatest slide, the mail system. The result, however, was Ong and his group causing damage and disturbance throughout the city, which eventually led them to be dragged before the king of Omashu. The king quickly figured out that Ong was the avatar and decided to test him. He gave Ong 3 deadly challenges to save Katara and Sokka. After Ong succeeded, the king gave him one last challenge, to say his name. Ong, thinking hard, realized the truth. The king was none other than his old friend Bumi. Now the group stood in the throne room, speaking to Bumi. Bumi laughed and said that messing with people was pretty fun, but he still had a good reason. The world had changed too much in 100 years, and it needed balance. His tone grew serious as he focused on Ong and said, you have a difficult task ahead of you. You must learn all 4 elements to defeat the Fire Lord and bring balance. Ong nodded at that, but Bumi's face turned grim. Defeating the Fire Lord won't be easy, he said. And he might not even be your greatest obstacle. Among the Fire Nation's ranks, there is a literal monster, a firebender unlike any other. Ong asked, is it the imposter people are calling the Fire Avatar? Bumi nodded gravely. You have seen my hands and body. They're full of burn marks. I received them when I met that monster. I was lucky to survive him. If not for his sense of honor and pride, I wouldn't be standing here talking to you. Ong's eyes widened with fear. Is he really that strong? Stronger than the Fire Lord? Bumi nodded again. After my defeat, I began investigating him. I found out that he once had a duel with Fire Lord Oze. The Fire Lord was losing, while that monster wasn't even bending. And once he did fire bend, the Fire Lord was nearly killed. Ong paled at the thought. Bumi placed a firm hand on his shoulder. I don't want to scare you, Ong. You are the Avatar. Once you master all 4 elements, I know you can defeat that monster. But before then, you must avoid him at all costs. Before you are ready, if you hear the name Tai Lung, just run. Ong was stunned. His heart pounded as he asked, this Tai Lung, how does he look? Bumi thought for a moment and described him, his golden eyes, black hair tied into a ponytail, sharp young features, and that he was only 16 years old. Ong swallowed hard, and so did Katara and Sokka. Bumi noticed the change in their expressions. He blinked, then asked slowly, you met him, didn't you? Ong nodded. After Ong and his 2 friends left, Bumi sat alone in the throne room, his gaze drifting to his burned hand. The scars had long since healed, but the memory of how he got them never faded. He was surprised to hear that Ong had already met Tai Lung and even more surprised that Tai Lung hadn't tried to fight him. It wasn't clear why Tai Lung had chosen not to capture or test the boy. But in Bumi's mind, the answer was simple enough, Tai Lung most likely wanted to face the Avatar at his full strength, not a child who only knew how to bend air. In Bumi's eyes, that was the best possible outcome for now. Ong needed time to grow, to learn, and to become a proper Avatar. Whatever Tai Lung's reasons were, the result was the same, it had allowed Ong to walk away safely, and perhaps, for the foreseeable future, things would remain that way. Bumi's mind drifted back to the day he had first met Tai Lung. That day still burned vividly in his memory. In his long life, he had faced countless opponents, but Tai Lung was different. He was a monster unlike any bender Bumi had ever seen. In truth, when the rumors spread claiming Tai Lung was the avatar, Bumi had believed them. Bumi sighed, leaning back on his throne. He was glad to see Ong again after so long, safe, alive, and still with the spark of his youth intact. And most of all, he was glad that the worst had not come to pass. The Fire Nation didn't have the avatar on their side. Chapter 36, The Fire Monster of the Zaofa Front. Bumi POV. They called me the Mad King. And, truth be told, they weren't entirely wrong. Living more than 100 years in this world without a touch of madness would be unbearably dull. But even madness has its shape, its form, its wisdom. What no one could deny, no matter how they mocked me, was that I had my own way of seeing the world, sharper even than theirs. And today, that sharpness was put to use. I was leading my army into the Zaofa mountain range, prepared to ambush the Fire Nation soldiers. I had placed scouts there long ago, expecting the Fire Nation might try their luck in those difficult peaks. The path was narrow, steep, and difficult for an army to march through, which made it the perfect place for them to attempt it, thinking no one would guard such a treacherous route. How wrong they were! The instant my scouts spotted the red tide approaching, word was sent to me. Without hesitation, I marched with 3,000 soldiers. Thanks to the terrain and our quiet preparations, always best to prepare just in case, we reached the range before the Fire Nation, setting our trap with ample time. The Zaofa Mountains had a valley cutting through them, a thin scar with 2 small rivers running through its belly. And at the center, there was a long pass so narrow that no more than 10 men could walk side by side. That pass was the key to everything. I divided my forces in 2. The first, smaller force would lie in wait atop the cliffs, watching the enemy funnel through the pass. At my signal, they would bring the mountains down, rocks, boulders, the earth itself to close the pass and crush the invaders beneath stone. The second, far larger force would encircle the valley. Their task, seal it with rock, and at the same time, block the 2 rivers. The water would swell, flooding the valley, trapping the enemy inside. When the Fire Nation realized the pass was sealed and their path blocked, it would be too late. I had no interest in a frontal clash. Battles of fire against earth burned too brightly and too fiercely for my liking. I want them to waste away, to weaken slowly. The water would rise, the walls would hold, and the valley would become their tomb. And it worked. Perfectly. The mountains collapsed on the first wave, burying them in a rain of rocks. Those who remained were trapped behind walls of earth, unable to advance, unable to flee. Their leader hesitated, and that hesitation was fatal. By the time they understood, the blocked rivers had formed a swelling lake, its waters pressing against the rock walls like a patient beast. When the Fire Nation finally realized the trap, it was already too late. For a moment, I felt remorse. A flicker of pity for the men running in panic below me, their fire useless against stone and rising water. But pity could not save my people. Mercy could not hold the Fire Nation back. So I stood upon my wall of earth, watching them scramble, knowing in days, they would all die there. And then, everything changed just when everything was about to end. A small force arrived days later, no more than 500 Fire Nation soldiers sent to free their trapped comrades. 500 against my 3,000. 6 to 1. Odds even a Mad King could count. They had no chance. Yet as they approached, something felt strange. Their formation spread wide, as if they meant to cover every inch of ground, though their numbers were too few. And from among them, a single soldier rode forward, mounted on a mongoose lizard. Alone. Straight toward us. My soldiers hurled rocks at him, determined to crush this fool before he could reach the walls. But he leapt from his mount with uncanny grace, twisting through the air, dodging every boulder as though he saw their paths before they even flew. He landed lightly, and without a pause, kept walking forward with a calm, terrible confidence. I leaned forward, studying him. His face was young, far too young for such a display of skill. Why, I wondered, would a boy march alone toward 3,000 men? My wondering was answered almost immediately. The boy suddenly moved, lightning crackled around his body, raw and violent, and in the next instant the greatest lightning bending I had ever seen was unleashed toward us, toward the earth wall. I widened my old eyes, throwing up rocks in a desperate attempt to intercept the strike. Too late. Too weak. The lightning shattered my defenses as though they were nothing, then slammed into the wall, tearing it apart in an explosion of blinding light and raw fire. The water we had dammed surged forward, bursting free with a crashing force that shook the valley. Hold the wall! Block it! I roared, my voice ragged. But even as I shouted, another lightning bolt split the air, striking a different section. A second section of the wall collapsed, stone and mud splintering under the furious strike. In moments, the entire barrier gave way. The torrent swept through with merciless strength, washing away my men, those who stood atop the wall, and those stationed behind it, all of them swallowed in an instant. I myself was thrown down, body crashing into the mud. My hands pressed to the earth instinctively, trying to steady, to resist. The tide weakened as it poured out of the valley, leaving only thick, sucking mud where moments ago there had been soldiers and stone. I lifted my head and looked forward. The boy stood there calmly, watching us. Then he smiled. Predatory. Cold. In that smile, I felt a dread, sharp and deep in my chest. This boy was not normal. No, he was something else entirely. A wild beast hiding in human skin. For a breath, I was frozen in that realization. But already my men were recovering, dragging themselves from the mud. Dozens encircled him, weapons drawn, bending stance ready. Beyond them, the 500 Fire Nation soldiers pressed closer, step by steady step. And behind us, the trapped army began to stir, voices rising with the possibility of freedom. My time to act was vanishing. We had to defeat the 500 quickly and retreat. It was the only option left. Attack. Cut a path. Retreat. I bellowed, forcing strength into my words. My soldiers obeyed, moving in waves toward the enemy. And then the boy struck again. He thrust his fist forward, and from it erupted a torrent of fire, the greatest wave of flame I had ever seen. It wasn't the usual orange fire. It was blue, dreadful, and merciless. In the blink of an eye, tens of my men were burned to ash, their screams gone as swiftly as they came. I watched in horror as he lunged into the largest cluster of soldiers, his movements fluid, lethal. Each strike crushed bones, each wave of flame turned armor and flesh alike to ashes. His fighting style, if it could even be called style, was cold graceful dance, efficient, terrifying, as if designed just to destroy and kill. His fire burned stronger than anything I had ever witnessed, stronger than even the firebenders during Sozin's comet, a century ago. Back then, the firebenders had been terrifying, yes. But none, not one, had wielded power like this. I shook the thoughts from my mind. Dwelling on fear would doom us all. No one among my soldiers could stand against this boy, no, this monster. If he was to be stopped, I would have to do it myself. And so I charged forward. The boy noticed me immediately. His golden eyes locked onto mine, and he gave me a predatory smile. Then he charged. I reacted quickly, wrenching a massive boulder from the earth and hurling it into his path. Any normal soldier would have dodged. But not him. He kept moving, straight into it, and the next moment his leg lashed out. The boulder shattered under his kick as if he were an earthbender. I was taken aback, but I did not falter. With a sweep of my arms, I bent a wave of mud to engulf him. The boy answered with a kick. A horizontal strike that birthed a torrent of blue fire, a wave like the ocean itself, rushing forward to devour everything in its path. My mud was nothing against it, it just vanished, swallowed whole by that unnatural flame. I slammed the ground, raising the thickest wall of earth I could muster. Even then, the heat seared through, so fierce it burned my skin from behind my wall. I knew at that moment, if that fire had touched me directly, I'd already be dead. Then I heard his voice, from above. You are King Bumi? The greatest earthbender in the world. I looked up. He crouched atop the wall I had raised, smiling down at me like a beast sizing up its prey. I forced the best smile I could manage. Young men these days are rude. First you try to roast an old man alive, then you start a conversation without even introducing yourself. The boy chuckled. Where are my manners? I am Captain Tai Lung of the Fire Nation. I've heard a lot about the mighty Earth King and possibly the strongest bender in the world. I blinked. Then I gave him a crooked grin. I'm just a mad old man. You wouldn't want to be known as the old man burner, would you? He tilted his head, eyes glinting. You know, I hate old men. For some reason, my luck's always bad with them. They've caused me both pain and humiliation in my life. So in a way, hearing you're the strongest and oldest, well, the thought of beating you feels strangely satisfying. I blinked again and said simply, that's too bad. I don't want to be beaten. With a punch upward, I sent the wall and the boy with it. Then I flipped the wall and smashed it down, raising a boulder with my free hand. My plan was simple, crush him between earth and rock. But he erupted in blue fire, a torrent that annihilated both of my creations. Another wave of flame came surging toward me. I dove into the ground, tunneling beneath and re-emerging some distance away, chest heaving. The boy looked at me with that same challenging smile, then sprinted toward me again. I bent quickly, pulling mud to halt his advance, then moved to bury him beneath the shifting earth. For a heartbeat, I thought I'd caught him by surprise. His eyes widened, then the smile returned. He raised both hands high, then slammed them into the ground. The world exploded. Fire erupted from beneath, tearing apart stone, soil, everything in sight. Flames licked through the very earth as though it were kindling. The blast propelled him upward, and I watched, stunned, as he rose high into the air. Lightning began to crackle around him, dancing across his form as he looked down at me. Then he struck. The lightning bolt ripped through the sky, aimed straight at me. I twisted aside at the last instant, barely dodging it. My heart pounded in disbelief. Unleashing lightning while airborne. I had never seen or heard of such a thing. Behind me, some of my soldiers rushed forward, desperate to aid me. I screamed at them to stay back, but they didn't listen. The boy's eyes shifted toward them. Flames erupted, wide and merciless. I leapt forward, raising walls to shield them, to intercept. But my defenses couldn't stop that horrible inferno. I heard their screams behind me. Felt the flames crash against me, searing my body. I collapsed to the ground in pain, my vision blurred. Through the haze I saw him, walking toward me. No longer smiling, he frowned as though disappointed. You couldn't dodge or defend yourself properly. If not for your men, my fire would not have touched you. I forced words past my dry throat. You look annoyed. Did you want to beat me fairly? Well, this is war. You won't find fairness here. To my shock, he turned his back on me. A victory like this feels unearned. I will let you and some of your men leave. When you recover, I will come for a proper match. I hadn't expected this kind mercy, and never in my wildest imagination I thought this beast in human skin had an honor to uphold. A weak chuckle escaped me. Nah, you will win. I know I can't defeat you. But what if I offer a deal instead? Let us all go. Promise never to participate in attacking my city in person. In return, I'll order my men to help you search for Fire Nation soldiers buried under the rocks. There may still be survivors. And if not, at least their bodies can be recovered. He stood there, silent for a time, his gaze unreadable. Then he turned back, his voice firm. Fine. I will tell my people to open a path. I expect some of your benders to return and help search for survivors, and corpses. If they don't, I will lead the charge into your city. I don't care what others think, but I am sure that Tai Lung is a beast in human skin. And with him around, the Fire Nation will win the war. Chapter 37, Chakras. Far from the Earth Kingdom, Tai Lung's ship finally arrived at the Eastern Air Temple. From the deck, Tai Lung stood still, his golden eyes fixed on the ancient building carved into the peaks of the towering mountains. The temple seemed to float in the sky itself, unreachable and untouchable. Beside him, Han and the rest of the crew stared upward with open curiosity. When the war first started, Han said, his voice carrying a note of respect, Fire Lord Sozin targeted the air nomad temples. Not only because of the avatar born next among them but also due to their location, the location made them nearly impossible to conquer. Without the comet's power, reaching and fighting them would have been hopeless. Tai tilted his head, still studying the temple. How long would it take you to climb this mountain and reach the temple? Han rubbed his chin, humming thoughtfully. An entire day. Maybe longer. The soldiers a century ago destroyed even the stairs leading to the top. There's no easy way anymore. He turned to Tai Lung with a wary look. Captain, are you sure about this? It's been abandoned for 100 years. No one lives up there. Tai Lung nodded without hesitation. I've seen how earth and water benders fight, how they move. I want to understand the air nomads. Maybe I'll find something about their way of living and training. Han let out a long sigh. Then I'll speak for everyone here when I say, we don't want to climb that ghostly place. We'd rather wait on the ship. That's fine, Tai Lung said evenly. Depending on what I find, I might stay a few days. Han gave a small bow of his head. Then I wish you a safe trip, and fine finds. Tai Lung smiled. Flames burst from his hands and feet, propelling him upward like a blazing arrow. The crew leaned against the railing, watching their captain soar higher and higher toward the temple peak. One of them whistled low. Think we could ever learn to fly like that? Han scoffed. Don't be ridiculous. Our captain's not normal. Who else learns to fly just because he got jealous of the Avatar's flying pet? The crew broke into laughter. Indeed, their captain was one of a kind. The climb hadn't taken Tai Lung long at all. Fire still faintly smoked from his limbs as he landed lightly on the courtyard stones of the Eastern Air Temple. He walked forward slowly, his golden eyes scanning the wide and silent halls. The mountain wind whistled through broken arches, carrying with it the faint scent of old ash. All around him lay scars of war, burned walls, shattered tiles, gouges in stone where fire had raged a century ago. Yet what he found strange was not the destruction, but the absence of corpses, neither monk nor soldier. It was as if the temple had bled, then cleaned. He explored for hours, moving from one hall to another. In a small chamber, he discovered scrolls, records of the air nomad's philosophy of peace and detachment. In another, he found stories written in flowing calligraphy about the cycles of the world and harmony of the elements. Eventually he stumbled upon what seemed to be a training ground. The faded rings marked into the floor hinted at movements and practices foreign to him. Tai Lung studied it all carefully. Finally, he climbed to the temple's highest peak, where a small courtyard opened to the endless sky. To his surprise, he was not alone. An old man sat cross-legged in the center, eyes closed, posture serene, as if untouched by time. As Tai Lung stepped closer, the man opened his eyes and smiled gently. Ah, a visitor. I did not expect one today. Tai Lung tilted his head. Nor did I expect to find someone living here. Are you, a survivor of the air nomads? The man shook his head, smile never fading. No, not an air nomad. But you could call me their spiritual brother. I am Guru Pathik. Tai Lung's brow furrowed. Then why stay here, alone? It must be a lonely existence. It is not so bad, Pathik replied. The skies are full of birds, and the mountains are full of life. Loneliness is only a burden if you resist it. The universe guided me here, so I wait. I wait to teach someone inner balance. But... He looked at Tai Lung more closely, eyes glimmering with quiet certainty. It is not you. Of that, I am sure. Tai Lung chuckled softly, though curiosity flickered in his eyes. And how do you teach inner balance? Isn't that something achieved only through meditation and peace within? Pathik nodded. Yes. But peace is not always simple to reach. Many do not see what holds them back. Sometimes only reflection, or another's guidance, can reveal it. For a moment, Tai Lung's mind drifted back to the Jade Palace. He remembered Shifu's teachings, and the whispered truth that the highest mastery of Qi required inner peace. Yet no master had ever explained how one was to find it. It was always left to the Kung Fu master to stumble into. Pathik's gaze sharpened, sensing the storm beneath Tai Lung's calm. I can feel it within you, rage. A storm unchecked. One day it may consume you, drive you to commit acts you can never take back. If you are willing, I can teach you to erase that rage. Tai Lung stiffened, genuinely caught off guard, his mind drifted to his past life and actions. After a long pause, he muttered, thanks for the offer. But I am fine as I am. Denying imbalance is imbalance itself, Pathik replied gently. Peace begins with admitting your chains. Only then can you release them. The words gnawed at Tai Lung's pride. He stayed silent, his jaw tight, his mind circling old teachings, old failures, old fury. At last, he gave a curt nod. Fine. How do we start finding inner peace? The Guru's face lit up with a smile. From his side, he lifted a wooden bowl brimming with a yellowish liquid, with a sharp scent of onion. Tai Lung blinked at it. You don't expect me to drink that, do you? Pathik chuckled, took a long sip himself, and smacked his lips. Ah! Tasty! He extended the bowl once more. Reluctantly, Tai Lung accepted it. He raised the bowl to his mouth, took a gulp, then lowered it again. You must have a unique taste to enjoy something like this. Pathik laughed warmly, the sound echoing into the vast mountains around them. Pathik led Tai Lung deep into the mountain, through a narrow passage that eventually opened into a vast cavern. The cave ceiling had cracks that let faint streaks of light spill inside. Scattered across the rocky floor were several small ponds, their surfaces reflecting the faint glow. The silence here was heavy but comforting, broken only by the faint dripping of water. The guru sat cross-legged in front of one of the ponds and gestured for Tai Lung to join him. Tell me, Pathik began softly, what do you know about chakras? Tai Lung lowered himself onto the floor. There are 7 chakras within the body, he replied calmly. They connect the chi pathways, and by opening them you gain mastery of chi and even increase its flow. Pathik nodded. That is true. But when you open all 7, you achieve something greater, true inner peace and balance. I opened them long ago, Tai Lung said without hesitation. But Pathik shook his head, his eyes narrowing slightly as though peering into the ex-leopard's soul. No. I can feel your chakras. They are half open. It is strange. I have never encountered someone like you. Usually, they are open or closed. But you stand in the middle. Your body is ready, but your spirit is not. For once, Tai Lung was silent, unsure how to respond. At last, he said simply, how do we start? We unlock them one by one, Pathik replied. First, we must free your spirit of its burdens and shackles. Sit. Breathe. Close your eyes. Tai Lung obeyed, closing his eyes as the guru's voice echoed through the chamber. The first chakra, Pathik said, is the earth chakra. It lies at the base of the spine. It deals with survival and is blocked by fear. Tell me, Tai Lung, what do you truly fear? Search deep within yourself. I fear no one, Tai Lung answered immediately, his voice calm, almost dismissive. Pathik tilted his head. Then perhaps you fear not someone, but something. Something yet to come. The words stirred something within him. Images flickered in Tai Lung's mind, memories of Fire Lord Oze, brought low, defeated and humiliated. Then, sharper still, the humiliation of his own defeats, at Po's hands, at Kai's, at the chameleons. Each failure gnawed at him, each memory threatening to drag him down into bitterness. He didn't want to become like Oze, a once great power reduced to a pitiful shadow in front of the world. But then he remembered the years of training, the endless hours of discipline. He steadied himself. If defeat came, he would not be like Oze. He would fall with honor, with courage, not in disgrace. When he opened his eyes again, they were steady. Pathik smiled warmly. Congratulations! You have opened your first chakra. That is the fastest I have ever seen. Tai Lung inclined his head lightly. What comes next? The second, Pathik said, is the water chakra. It lies in the sacrum, and it deals with pleasure. But it is blocked by guilt. What do you blame yourself for? Tai Lung hesitated. His mind drifted back to the Jade Palace, to his master, to his adopted father. He remembered the disappointment etched in Shifu's face the day he failed to become the dragon warrior. Worse still, he remembered the pain in Shifu's eyes when Tai Lung finally turned on the village, consumed by pride. He remembered when he attacked and nearly killed his father after 20 years of imprisonment. If only he had accepted his shortcomings. If only he had humbled himself instead of demanding destiny. If only he didn't see his father turning back on him as a betrayal. Perhaps things could have been different. Perhaps Shifu's eyes would not have been filled with sorrow. For hours, the visions replayed themselves, his arrogance, his bitterness, his anger, his fall, the hurt he had caused. And yet, beneath it all, a single thought rose: if he ever returned to that world, if fate allowed him to stand before Shifu again, he would apologize. He would admit his foolishness. When Tai Lung finally opened his eyes, there was a serene calm in them, a softness that had not been there before. Pathik studied him and nodded. You have accepted your guilt. And more, you wish to make amends. Your second chakra is open. Chapter 38, Chakras 2. The meditation cave was still, the faint sound of dripping water echoing softly. Guru Pathik sat calmly before Tai Lung, his eyes steady and kind. We arrive now at the fire chakra, Pathik began. It is located in the stomach. It deals with willpower and is blocked by shame. Tell me, Tai Lung, what are you ashamed of? For what reason are you disappointed in yourself? At once, a vision clouded Tai's mind. He saw himself once more in the Jade Palace, his heart burning with ambition. He had been so certain, so eager to claim the title of Dragon Warrior, to see the prideful look and happiness in Shifu's eyes. Yet the day it was denied him, everything shattered. His fists curled as he recalled the blind rage that followed, the innocent villagers beneath his fury. I was once denied something I was desperate to achieve, Tai said, his voice low, almost harsh. In my wrath, I attacked the innocent. I vented my rage on them, and destroyed their homes. Release through destruction was the only thing I knew, what I trained in my whole life. Attack the weaknesses and make the enemy suffer, that's the core of my style, and I turned it on the innocents because I was just angry. Pathik nodded, though his expression was heavy with gravity. And that shame still sits within you. But listen, Tai Lung, balance is not found by burying fault. It is found by accepting it, and then striving to make amends, however difficult. Shame weakens will. Making peace with your past strengthens it. Tai Lung's jaw tightened, but then he exhaled. If I go back there one day, I will apologize to those I wronged unfairly. A gentle smile touched Pathik's lips. Good. You have opened your fire chakra. He continued, his voice calm but resonant. The next chakra is air. It rests in the heart, dealing with love, and it is blocked by grief. Tai's eyes unfocused as memories swept through him. He saw the old world, the Jade Palace, the animals, the endless kung fu. 16 years had passed in this strange new land, yet still, he drifted back to what he had lost. I live in this world, Tai whispered, but I do not belong to it. Everything feels wrong to me. I am all alone. Pathik tilted his head gently. Do you not have a family? People whose company you enjoy? People you might even call friends? For the first time, Tai's expression softened into something faintly warm. He thought of his parents, of Tai Li and Mai, of his loyal crew. The corners of his mouth curved into a small smile. So you have such people, Pathik said, nodding. Then you already have bonds. You belong to this world, Tai Lung. You are not alone. Tai inhaled deeply, and released the breath in a slow, steady stream. You are right. I shouldn't linger in those thoughts, I am different but not truly alone. Then let us move forward, Pathik said. The sound chakra lies in the throat. It deals with truth and is blocked by lies. I have never truly considered myself a human. Nor even a bender, Tai replied immediately, his voice full of clarity. I am not like everyone else. I never have been. What I told others was never the truth of what I thought of myself. Pathik's brows lifted in surprise. Then tell me, what do you consider yourself? A faint smile touched Tai's lips. I am a kung fu master before anything else. That is who I am. Everything else comes afterward. Pathik hummed thoughtfully. A new term to my ears. It is foreign to this world, but you can say it is like the root of bending styles without elements, Tai replied simply. The guru gazed at him for a long while before bowing his head. Congratulations, Tai Lung. You have opened another chakra. He wasted no time moving forward. Now we come to the light chakra, located in the forehead. It deals with insight, and is blocked by illusion. At once, Tai Lung's mind was filled with an illusion so real it twisted his heart. He was back in the Jade Palace, kneeling before Grand Master Oogway. The ancient tortoise looked upon him with pride. Congratulations, Oogway said warmly, for becoming the Dragon Warrior. Shifu stood nearby, eyes glistening with joy. Oogway extended the dragon scroll, waiting for Tai Lung to claim it. For a moment, Tai Lung just stared before his paw reached out. He took the scroll and opened it, only to reflect his face in its blank golden inside. Tai Lung stood there staring at himself silently, he lost track of time as his mind kept replaying his first life. Then slowly, he returned the dragon scroll to Oogway before turning to look at Shifu calmly. He said, I know now, that was never my destiny. Perhaps in my blind pursuit I lost my true destiny. And that is fine. It took me too long to understand the meaning of the dragon scroll and how I lost to Po. I lost the moment I stopped believing in myself. Tai Lung smiled as he took a few steps toward Shifu, bowed deeply, and whispered, Thank you for everything, and I am sorry for what I have done, Father. I promise you I will find my new destiny this time. Then, turning to Oogway, he added, I know this was your way of testing me. But I will never find peace if I simply let it go like this. Before hesitation could stop him, Tai Lung's fist lashed out. His strike thundered against Oogway, sending the master flying. The illusion shattered. Tai opened his eyes in the cave and laughed, a raw, unrestrained sound. That felt good, even if it was just an illusion. Pathik stared at him strangely. He had not seen the vision itself, but he could feel the ripple of Tai Lung's chi, the emotions radiating from him. Whatever had occurred had been steeped in violence, yet somehow, impossibly, the chakra had opened. When Pathik's senses returned, he found Tai Lung watching him silently, waiting. With a soft chuckle, the guru reached for the familiar bowl of onion-scented soup and extended it. Tai took it with a smirk, drinking deeply. You should come out of seclusion and taste real food for once. Pathik laughed quietly. Pathik continued the final chakra, the thought chakra, located at the crown of the head. It dealt with cosmic energy and was blocked by earthly attachment. Tai Lung paused at that and said, "That's not possible." Pathik replied, "You must let go of it all if you want to open the final chakra and achieve inner peace." Tai answered, "Aside from the people who I know and I met in my life, my greatest attachment is my own kung fu, my training and my skills. If I let go of that all, what is left of me?" Pathik replied calmly, "Everything has an end. You need to learn that losing something is not the end." Tai shook his head. Losing something is one thing, but letting go of it intentionally is another. The peace you speak of is emptiness. Pathik sighed. If you can't let go of it, you will never open the final chakra. Tai Lung chuckled, relaxed and without an ounce of worry. It is fine. I am satisfied with the other 6. I want to remain true to myself and my teachings this time. Letting go is not even an option. Pathik sighed again and said, I didn't mention earlier that the process can't be stopped once it starts. If you don't complete it now, then you will never open the 7th chakra. Tai Lung paused at that. As far as he knew from the Jade Palace's teachings, inner peace took time and was achieved gradually, not in a single step. After a moment of contemplation, he said, I believe inner peace can be achieved in different ways. Maybe your method is not fully suitable for me. Pathik sighed. You have experienced the opening of 6 chakras. Your spirit needs to be ready and accepting. You can't just forcefully open the chakra later on because you tried something else. Tai was silent for a moment, then said, now that I think of it, that is not necessarily true. Pathik looked confused. Tai smiled. Previously, I thought my chakras were opened, but now I can feel 6 of them truly are, while the 7th is half opened, as you put it. Maybe I can force it open. Pathik replied, that's not how it should work. Tai smiled. I am a kung fu master. I don't fully conform to the laws of this world. He sat again, cross-legged. He began rotating qi in his body like he used to. This time, with his chakras opened, he could feel his control and flow were nothing like before. The last chakra was the clog of his body. Tai focused all of his qi and forced it into flowing through the 7th chakra. As he did, Tai felt a severe pain in his head due to his actions, but he persisted. He wanted the chakra to open forcefully. Pathik, seeing this, spoke up urgently. Stop this madness now. You will harm yourself. But Tai didn't listen. Instead, he pushed his qi even harder. The next moment, golden qi exploded from Tai's body like a torrent, shocking Pathik. The qi radiated from Tai's body like a storm, it was visible to the naked eye. Pathik just stared at the sight and whispered, how could this be? What are you? Chapter 39, Heading North. After his unexpected gains, Tai Lung descended the temple toward his ship. The moment he arrived, his crew rushed to him, led by Han, who immediately asked, You've been up there for days, we were thinking of coming to check on you. And, what happened to you, to come back in such a state? Where are your clothes? Tai Lung had ascended the mountain wearing his military uniform, but now he returned shirtless, his pants torn from strain and wear. He replied calmly, I found something unexpected up there, but I didn't realize days had passed. Anyway, we are done here. Let's head back home, it has been a while since we left. Han nodded without more questions, it was obvious their captain didn't want to share details. As for the rest of the crew, they smiled hearing they were going back home. Days later, Tai Lung's ship arrived at the Fire Nation capital. The moment the vessel docked, Tai Lung disembarked and headed straight home to see his parents. His return came as a surprise to them, as they had received no letter saying he was coming back. Tai Lung had to admit, he grew to enjoy his stay with his parents again, something he hadn't expected when he was first born in this world. But one thing surprised him: Tai Li had left the capital to join a circus. In one of her letters, she had mentioned her desire to travel, but Tai Lung had never imagined she would choose such a life. At the same time, he learned that the ever-gloomy Mai had also left the capital, traveling with her family to a settlement in the Earth Kingdom. Her father had been assigned to govern the settlement and the surrounding villages. Tai Lung's life fell into a peaceful pattern of training and living in his home, and it lasted for a whole 2 weeks till his father, Sholian, took him to his study to speak in private one night. "I know you are still resting from your long travels and 2 weeks is barely enough," Sholian began, "but do you have plans for what you are going to do next? Are you planning to leave again?" Tai Lung replied, "I am thinking of going to visit Tai Li's circus. In her last letter, the circus is going around our settlements in the Earth Kingdom." Sholian nodded, then said, "Recently, Commander Zhao has been promoted to Admiral. Right now, he is mobilizing the army. He is going to lead our forces to invade the Northern Water Tribe." Tai Lung had met Commander Zhao before during his travels. In his eyes, Zhao was incompetent and arrogant. Sometimes he wondered how the man had ever been promoted to commander in the first place. To hear that he had now become an admiral was an even greater surprise. After some silence, Tai Lung said, "Didn't we try to siege the North Pole multiple times in the past? Every time we failed when the moon rose in the sky. In the end, it was decided that the North couldn't be conquered. What changed this time?" Sholian replied, "Zhao has some secret plan, and he's confident it will work. The Fire Lord agreed based on that plan and gave him permission to assemble and lead the greatest fleet to invade the North Pole." Tai Lung's voice turned cold. Knowing Zhao's overinflated ego and incompetence, that won't end well. Sholian chuckled. "I admit sometimes I think Oze doesn't think at all. Since our days under Master Zhang, Zhao was not anywhere near the smartest or the most capable, just ambitious man with violent temperament." Tai Lung's eyes narrowed. "You know, we can get rid of Oze and put his older brother in his place. It is better for the sake of everyone." Sholian replied ruefully, "Prince Iroh refused that. He said this is not his destiny. Personally, I believe it is the guilt and sadness of losing his son is what truly prevents him from becoming the Fire Lord. Iroh of old would not have left the fate of the Fire Nation in the hand of Oze." Tai Lung asked, "Do you want to take his place? To become the Fire Lord, I can make it reality and no one in the world can stop me." Sholian blinked, then laughed. "No. I like my position as Admiral. I wouldn't trade it for anything, even the Fire Lord." Then his face grew serious. "Tai, I want you to join the invasion force and go to the north. Many of the men under Zhao had worked under me before, I know them in person and I want them to be safe, to come back to their children and families." He looked at his son with pride as he continued, "I know you hate to fight in war or act as a conqueror, and I am not asking you to start doing that now. But if Zhao does something foolish and threatens the lives of our people, I want you to step in to help them. At the very least, help them retreat safely. Once you are done, you can go visit Tai Li." Tai Lung sighed heavily. "Fine. I will follow this ridiculous invasion." 2 days later, Tai Lung was on his ship heading north to join Admiral Zhao's fleet. As they approached the gathering ships, Tai Lung turned to his crew and said, "Remember, we are not here to join the war. Stay out of it and ignore any orders. Think of this farce as if you are on vacation but chose the wrong spot. And if someone has an issue with you, tell them to speak to me." One of the crew muttered, "Why did we even come here, Captain? Couldn't you just mount some other ship to tag along with the fleet? What's the point if we are just going to watch?" Tai Lung smirked. "I want to go to the Earth Kingdom after we are done in the north to visit my fiancé. I naturally need you for transport." The entire crew began booing him for such selfishness. Tai Lung only laughed and ignored the accusing voices. It took them a few days to catch up with the fleet after leaving their home. Once they finally arrived, Tai Lung flew off his ship, heading directly toward the leading vessel, Admiral Zhao's ship. Many Fire Nation soldiers saw him flying over their decks, fire blazing from his hands and feet, and voices of shock rippled through the fleet. Even the soldiers on Zhao's ship froze in disbelief at the sight of a captain flying through the air with fire bending and landing upon their deck. Tai Lung looked at the statue-still soldiers and asked calmly, "Where is Admiral Zhao?" The soldiers quickly led him to the main deck, where Admiral Zhao, General Iroh, and several other high officers were gathered. His arrival drew everyone's attention. Tai Lung was well known among the Fire Nation military. As the son of Admiral Lung, his name carried weight, and though he held immense power, he rarely participated in large-scale battles. Instead, he roamed, cleaning up only the problems he encountered. Admiral Zhao narrowed his eyes. Captain Lung. I did not expect your arrival. I was not told you were joining this mission. Tai Lung replied, I and my crew are not joining. We are just tagging along. Zhao frowned deeply. And why is that? I am not here to steal your achievement, if that is what you are worried about, Tai said evenly. I am simply here in case you mess up. If that happens, I'll help our soldiers retreat. Admiral, feel free to treat me as if I don't exist. Zhao's face twisted with rage at the implication. To think Tai Lung was nothing more than a backup plan for his failure. His voice rose angrily. Did playing the fake avatar get to your head? Do you think you can do whatever you want? Tai Lung replied without care, it's not my fault that everyone is so weak that you can't tell the difference between a strong firebender and the avatar. And yes, I can do what I want. Do you want me to prove it to you? Zhao's face reddened with fury, but he didn't dare refute him. Like many others, he feared crossing Tai Lung. Iroh coughed and stepped forward, raising a calming hand. Now, let's calm down, everyone. We are all on the same side. Captain Lung is here only for assurance and means no harm. Tai Lung's eyes turned toward Iroh. What is stranger than me being here is you, General. Don't you usually accompany Zuko around? Why did you leave his side? Or is he part of the fleet? Iroh sighed, while Zhao smirked and answered, Prince Zuko has passed away. There was an unfortunate accident. Tai Lung didn't show much reaction to the news. He simply said, You have my condolences, General. I don't want to be rude, but Zuko has always been the unlucky one in the royal family. His words made Iroh sigh again. He didn't mind the blunt words and in truth, Iroh agreed with Tai Lung's statement. Zuko was indeed unlucky. He didn't deserve such a cruel fate. Chapter 40, The Siege of the North. For the next 3 days, Tai Lung remained aboard Zhao's ship, silent and watchful. He listened to the discussions between Zhao and his officers, their plans, their boasts, their so-called strategy. At times, Tai Lung would sit with General Iroh for a quiet tea session. The old general's calm and grounded presence was a sharp contrast to Zhao's bluster and boastful stand. This was the peace before the storm. The moment the fleet of Fire Nation ships reached the North Pole, Zhao wasted no time in barking orders. The massive armada plowed through the outer ice fields guarding the Northern Water Tribe's borders. Slowly, methodically, the ships encircled the enemy land, establishing a formidable naval blockade. Before them loomed the tribe's city, defended by a towering wall of ice and a relatively narrow path that led into the city. Zhao's eyes gleamed with ambition as he raised his arm and ordered the first wave of attack. A fleet of smaller, faster catapult ships surged forward. Their task was simple yet ruthless, they launched a ceaseless barrage of flaming projectiles. Harass the defenders. Test their defenses. Keep them occupied until the larger fleet could close in. Standing proudly at the prow of his ship, Zhao watched the assault unfold. His voice rang with smug confidence. This is a good first test. They are hard to stop and will force the water barbarians to show what they have. Decades later, the history will remember the great Admiral Zhao who ended the water civilization and brought glory to the Fire Nation. Beside him, Iroh folded his hands behind his back and spoke calmly, his words a quiet warning. Admiral Zhao, history is not always kind to people. Don't let your confidence blind you and you must not underestimate the enemy. You speak of experience, General Iroh. Fear not, I will not repeat your legendary failure at Ba Sing Se. I will make the world remember me for my victory only. I hope you are right, Admiral. For your own sake, Iroh replied. The invasion had just begun and all was going according to Zhao's plans and expectations. The water tribe attacks on the ships was simply not enough to stop the invasion. Even the Avatar unexpected intervention was still not enough. The fleet continued advancing steadily. Through it all, Tai Lung continued to observe silently nearby, he had watched everything unfold silently without care. But deep down, he was thinking to himself, so the Avatar is stronger than I gave him credit for. But more importantly, what is that enormous chi deep in the water tribe city? As daylight came to an end and the moon began to shine high in the sky, the Fire Nation fleet halted its assault. The battle ceased, each side preparing for the confrontation that awaited with the dawn. On Zhao's ship, Tai Lung sat silently nearby while General Iroh warned the admiral about the danger looming above. If we invade the city and do not finish the battle before nightfall, Iroh said gravely, the moon will be our downfall. Its power is theirs. It will make them undefeatable. Zhao smirked with absolute confidence. Do not concern yourself, General. I am working on a plan to handle that issue once and for all. Tai Lung narrowed his eyes at that. His instincts stirred, whatever Zhao was planning was no small matter. And yet, another part of him wondered if Zhao truly had a plan at all. The man had never struck him as a clever strategist. That night, Tai Lung walked the deck of the ship alone when his sharp ears suddenly picked up the faint murmur of voices, Iroh's, and another quieter one. Tai Lung followed the sound to the edge of the deck and peered down. There, in the darkness, he saw Zuko descending slowly into the icy waters in a small boat. Tai Lung blinked, surprised. So, he lives after all. He shook his head after a moment, turning away. Without a word, he continued his walk to a quiet corner at the back of the ship, where he sat cross-legged, slipping into meditation. At dawn, the sun rose golden over the frozen horizon, and the Fire Nation fleet roared back to life. The armada surged forward, smashing against the walls of the Northern Water Tribe's capital. Soldiers poured into the city, spilling fire across ice. At the same time, Zhao gave orders to unleash massive drills, sending them burrowing beneath the city to burst from under the frozen ground. Tai Lung remained unmoving, still meditating. The sun climbed to its zenith before he finally opened his eyes just in time to see a figure leap onto the deck. The man wore a Fire Nation soldier's uniform, but with strange black spikes on his shoulders. He landed directly in front of Tai Lung. That's not even our uniform, Tai Lung remarked offhandedly. The intruder spun around, startled, only to find Tai Lung sitting calmly behind him. Panic flared in the man's eyes. He screamed, I am Han, the future chief of the Water Tribe. Die fire scum, and lunged forward with his spear. Tai Lung caught the weapon mid-thrust, yanked it free, and with a casual motion flung the man over the rail and into the icy waters below. He blinked twice, then muttered quietly, that was the future chief? The Water Tribe is doomed. After a pause, he exhaled while shaking his head, then returned to his meditation. Time drifted on. The distant echoes of battle, the clash of weapons, the screams of men, all faded into the background. When Tai Lung opened his eyes again, night had fallen. The full moon loomed behind him, its silver glow illuminating the world below. Rising to his feet, he made his way to the strategy chamber only to find Zhao was gone. One of the soldiers stationed there saluted him. Captain Lung, the admiral took his guard and left on a mission to guarantee our victory. What mission? Tai asked. The soldier shook his head. It is a secret, sir. We were never told. Where is General Iroh? He disappeared shortly after the admiral left. We don't know where he went. Tai Lung nodded slowly, then walked back to the bow of the ship. His eyes narrowed as he gazed into the distance, where he could feel the enormous Qi. After a long moment of contemplation, his curiosity took hold of him, he ignited fire from his limbs and took flight, streaking toward the Qi source. As he neared the heart of the Water Tribe city, the world around him suddenly shifted, bathed in crimson light. He stopped mid-flight and looked up. The moon, once silver, was now blood-red. Confusion filled him. In both his lives, he had never seen anything like this. A foreboding feeling pressed against him, whispering of a bad omen. At the same time, the Qi he had been sensing earlier rippled violently, growing uneasy. With a frown, Tai Lung pressed onward, flying straight toward it at full speed. And as he got close, his gaze caught the scene clearly, figures gathering at the heart of the city near a small pond. Closest to the water stood Admiral Zhao, clutching a small bag in his hand, with 4 guards at his side, tense and alert. Opposite them stood the Avatar, his pet, and his companions. Zuko, battered and bound, was strapped on the pet's back. And alone, standing to the side of both groups with a firm stance, was General Iroh, his eyes fixed on Zhao as if ready for war. Tai Lung narrowed his eyes. Then, with a sudden drop, he dived from the sky. He landed between the two groups with a heavy thud as blue fire burst outward in a dissipating shockwave. The impact left everyone staring in stunned silence, their eyes wide in disbelief at the man descending from the night sky. Straightening himself, Tai Lung fixed Zhao with a piercing stare. He spoke, "What is going on here, Admiral? And is the red moon related to you? The chi he had been following radiated from the small bag Zhao clutched, pulsing with unnatural intensity. Not giving chance to Zhao to answer, Iroh spoke up. Zhao wants to kill the mortal form of the moon spirit, effectively erasing the moon itself. Tai Lung glanced briefly at Iroh, then back to Zhao, his golden eyes narrowing further. Was this your plan? To kill the moon? Zhao straightened with arrogance, his voice carrying a feverish pride. The moon is our enemy. It empowers the water tribe. Since the spirit chose to dwell in this world at the cost of its immortality, it must face the consequences. And I, Admiral Zhao, shall be the Moon Slayer, the man who stripped the barbarians of their strength and conquered the north. Tai Lung shook his head slowly, his tone laced with disdain. I knew you weren't the brightest, but this is a new low even for you. We benefit from the moon, it illuminates our nights, governs the tides, perhaps more things we don't even understand yet. Zhao's face twisted with rage. That is nothing compared to removing the power of the water tribe. And you? His voice cracked with fury. You said you wouldn't stand in my way. That you wouldn't meddle in this war. Tai Lung's expression hardened. Waging war, conquering lands, chasing your glory, that's your ambition. I won't stop you, I have no right to do so. But harming the world we live in. His eyes gleamed dangerously. That, Zhao, is unacceptable. Free the spirit or I will turn you to ashes. For a flicker of a moment, fear broke through Zhao's mask of arrogance. He clenched his jaw, closed his eyes, and with a huff, turned his back. He released the moon spirit from the bag. The world shifted instantly. Above them, the red glow vanished, replaced by the soft, silver radiance of the restored moon. Calm rippled across the pond as if the world itself exhaled in relief. Tai Lung gave a slow nod, then turned his head toward the Avatar's group. You can have your fight or war, he said coolly. But do it somewhere else. The moon's place is off limits. A collective gasp came from the Avatar group, their eyes wide as they saw Zhao hurling fire at the newly freed spirit. The next moment, the world went black. The moon vanished from the sky. Darkness consumed the night. Tai Lung's head snapped around, his eyes blazing with fury. At the same time, Iroh roared in anger, unleashing fire upon Zhao. The Admiral's guards rushed forward to intercept him. Zhao, seizing the chaos, turned and bolted toward the exit without looking behind. Tai Lung's fingers curled into a fist. His eyes locked on Zhao's fleeing figure. With a growl, he punched forward. The pond erupted in an inferno of blue fire. The flames surged into a colossal wall, racing across the ice with the force of a hurricane. Zhao barely managed to turn, his scream echoing, then cut short as the blue blaze devoured him whole. When the fire finally receded, a giant gaping hole remained in the icy walls. Nothing of Zhao remained, no body, no ash, no trace. He had been obliterated in an instant. The silence that followed was suffocating. All eyes turned toward Tai Lung, horrified at the sheer power he displayed.
Thanks for listening.